Stick and Poke by Marauder23. Summary. Logan stares at her hard, over enunciating every syllable like she's an idiot. Do, pause. You, pause. Do, pause. Cover up work? A vein in her forehead throbs. Oh, course I do, Logan. At least 5% of people who come in to get work want something covered up. But he cuts her off mid-rant. Any open appointments tomorrow? How about 5? That's when I close the shop. You can add it to your portfolio. I'm assuming you're still building it? She can only flounder, voice dried up and abandoned. No excuse presents itself, and she stands there, dumb and silent, but he seems to take this lack of coherent response as agreement. Perfect. See you tomorrow, short stack. He turns before Louise can splutter further, disappearing into the shop. Smell the roses. Floral boutique. Her mouth falls open. What the hell just happened? When Cynthia asks Logan to watch the flower shop for a few months, who should happen to be finishing her apprenticeship at the tattoo parlor next door? The tattoo parlor, flower shop, Louigan AU no one asked for. Notes. For Babs vibes. I blame Babs entirely. Thanks for dragging me into this ship head first, my friend. Quick note. This is an E-rated fic. That means sex. Explicit sex. Louise is 21. Logan is 27. If this is not for you, go ahead and click out now. No worries. Take care of yourself, dear reader. The rest of you sticking around. Welcome. Chapter 1. A solicitous start. The buzz of the tattoo gun sings. A familiar hum that elicits a shiver of excitement at the base of her spine. Marshmallow nods her approval. Ever the serene vixen. Good work, sugar. Now just finish up that shading. Gorgeous. Swipe the excess ink. That's it. Louise pulls back, switching off her tattoo gun and snapping off her gloves. All right, Jessica, you're done. Go see what you think. The redhead slides off the table and approaches the floor-length mirror, admiring her work. Shit, Louise. Really outdid yourself this time. She grins, feral and wild. It is good. A play on the lover's tarot card with 2 skeletons holding a revenant gaze, surrounded by dripping hearts and blooming flowers. The shading work on the skulls is probably her best yet. Marshmallow nods her approval as well. I think it's time, baby. Go ahead. Start booking your own appointments. Training wheels off. Don't forget to snap a pic and add that to your portfolio. She marches off, hips swaying in her 6-inch pumps to the back office, and Louise turns back to Jess. Think Millie will like it? Jess rolls her eyes. Of fucking course she will. It's your design. How could she not? Louise just glares, but can't help the tiny thrum of pride lighting her up from the inside out. She's apprenticed for the past year. Traveled all over the globe the year before that, picking up all sorts of different ink techniques. Nearly went broke doing it. So she's glad to be back in the harbor. 5 blocks from the family restaurant. Home. We still on for poker next week? Jess asks as Louise wraps her up in sarin wrap to preserve the ink from bleeding. Ready for me to take your money again so soon? Jess glares daggers and Louise grins, one eyebrow arched in challenge. Nitsub, you're the worst! I am. Jess flips her off while shoving cash into her hands. Louise preens, basking in her triumph, like the cat who caught the canary. She begins to rifle for Jess's change when the other girl's mouth parts, a tiny disbelieving laugh escaping. Oh my God, is that Logan Bush? Louise's head snaps up from where she was thumbing through the change. What? Fuck. She lost count and has to start again, but her eyes drift up. Casual, like she can't be bothered. There, across the street, stands a tall, athletic-looking man. Tousled blonde hair. That same stupid swagger he had back when he was a smart-ass teen. Fuck him with his cocky walk and his cheeky grin and the sharp line of his jaw. Her nose crinkles. Her hand itches to slap that self-satisfied smirk from his face. She hasn't seen him in 3 years? Wow, has it been that long? The last time she'd seen him was the night of her high school graduation, after she'd ditched a shitty party and snuck into one of the dive bars off the strip with Millie. She'd swiped Tina's ID and donned some faux glasses. It was stupid how easy it was. Oh, he'd seen her, eyes just a touch glassy from his drink, and waved her over. Millie, meanwhile, made her way over to a leggy brunette by the jukebox. Smelcher, what the hell are you doing here? She'd rolled her eyes and nodded begrudgingly. Bush, always with the flattery. He stared at her for a moment too long. Wait, was it your graduation tonight? She nodded, a small smile curving her lips. Youpie, popping the P perhaps more enthusiastically than necessary. So you can go ahead and get me a celebratory drink. Logan's eyes widened and he actually laughed. I don't think so, baby Belcher. You're still underage, and I am far too pure of heart to assist in serving a minor. She glared. I'm 18, dipshit. Just not legal drinking age. And pure of heart? More like Satan incarnate. You once tried to flush my Barobu cards down the toilet. He crossed his arms over his chest, and she was annoyed at the way his shirt pulled over his chest. When had his arms gotten bigger? Your dumb slug cards? They're collector's items. He just rolled his eyes. Whatever. No dice on the drinks, Smelcher. Louise stood from the bar, eyeing some gullible-looking college bros. Fine. I'll get one from someone else. She was just about to turn on the charm when she felt a hand close around her wrist. Immediately, her fingers clenched tight, cocking her fist back, ready to clock whoever. Logan? Don't. Her brow furrowed, ready to fire back. But his gaze was earnest as he added, I will get you one beer, and then I'm taking you home. Her mouth pursed, but his tone brokered no argument. And when he ushered her from the bar an hour later, his hand hovered at her lower back, not quite touching. When he dropped her in front of the restaurant, there seemed to be some intangible tension hanging in the air between them. For once, no snide comment came to her, but Logan's hands remained firm on the steering wheel until she pushed open the door. Only when she slammed it shut with a thunk did he speak. 4 ears, he called after her. Try not to be a total dumbass, okay? And he was gone. That was the last time Louise saw Logan Barry Bush. She'd heard the odd gossip about him over the years, trickling down through the grapevine. Jean, Tina, Rudy of all people. Lou, how it took him an extra year to graduate college. How he was in some dumb frat. His latest Instagram exploits. But she hadn't heard he'd be coming back. Lou, Earth to Louise. Jess is staring at her, an unfortunately smug grin pulling at the corners of her mouth. Get a little distracted? She wiggles her eyebrows suggestively, and Louise fake vomits with full theatrical gestures and all. Logan, as if. But thank you. I needed a laugh. Ook. See you next week then, Lou. Several days pass before she sees him again. She's been careful not to dally in front of the shop, ink about it for too long. You know, just in case. But on a particularly blustery Friday, the sketch she's been working on for a customer is pulled from her hands, the gust of wind carrying it up the street. Oh, fucking hell! Louise chases the thin paper for a block before finally pinning it to the ground with one of her trademark Black Doc Martens. Ha! She snatches it from under the sole of her boot, victorious, lips tugging into a smile. Well, 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 if it isn't Louise Smelcher. Her grip tightens on the paper, crinkling it as her teeth set on edge. Goddamn fuckity fuck. Her eyes narrow on him. Logan leans casually on a shovel just outside of the flower shop, t-shirt pulled snug over his chest. God, he would be a tight shirt-wearing prick. What do you want, Bush? Her voice is ice with an edge like a razor. Don't fuck with me. He grins wide, eyebrows raising in thinly concealed merriment. Still around the wharf, us, eh? She glares. She wishes she was chewing gum right now so she could pop and smack it in his face like she's too bored with him. She'll have to settle for arms crossing over her chest and an expression of utter disdain. Who? Looks like you are too, asshole. Logan nods, delighted. Yeah, Mom asked for me to watch the shop while she and my dad cruise the Caribbean or something. A derisive snort escapes her. Entitled rich people. Must be nice. Still bitter, I see. His smirk makes her see red, but he goes on anyway. Flowers aren't really my thing, but, gotta help out where I can. I'm sure you'll be a tremendous help. He doesn't miss a beat. So, you work at the tattoo shop? Louise rolls her eyes, arms instinctively crossing tighter around her. His gaze flicks down to her chest, and she allows herself a moment of hollow victory. Finishing my apprenticeship with Marshmallow. His brow pucker at that. Oh? Does he not think she can do it? Be an artist? Tattoo people? A sniping reply is on the tip of her tongue when he goes on. That's great. Her mouth pulls down in a frown. She glares. Again. She opens her mouth to retort, but what the fuck was she supposed to say to that? Fortunately, or unfortunately, because she is somehow still stuck in this conversation, Logan carries on. You do cover-up work? Louise blinks. What? The abrupt question catches her off guard. Logan stares at her hard, over-enunciating every syllable like she's an idiot. Pause. Cover-up work? A vein in her forehead throbs. Oh, course I do, Logan. At least 5% of people who come in to get work want something covered up. But he cuts her off mid-rant. Any open appointments tomorrow? How about 5? That's when I close the shop. But you can add it to your portfolio. I'm assuming you're still building it? She can only flounder, voice dried up and abandoned. No excuse presents itself, and she stands there, dumb and silent. But he seems to take this lack of coherent response as agreement. Perfect. See you tomorrow, short stack. He turns before Louise can splutter further, disappearing into the shop. Smell the roses. Floral boutique. Her mouth falls open. What the hell just happened? As promised, Logan shows up just after 5. Her last appointment is a walk-in at 3, and she's been obsessively cleaning her kit and doing supply runs to the back from the moment she finished. Too much pent-up energy, she tries to tell herself. Or maybe she's just trying to avoid a certain infuriating blonde. Belcher, guy up here says he's your 5 o'clock. Yup, yay, coming. She drags her feet and briefly entertains the idea that this could be an insane coincidence. Maybe she booked a 5 o'clock appointment last week that she forgot about. But when she turns the corner, her heart sinks. He leans casually against the counter and her jaw clenches. Fortunately, she's had time to consider a retort for this blasé, cool, calm, and collected Logan that's been antagonizing her with his anti-antagonistic approach. So what, pray tell, are we covering up today? Butterfly tramp stamp? I know how fond you used to be of people checking out your ass. But still, the asshole grins, one eyebrow arched in challenge. Yeah, you used to check out my ass 4 years. Her mouth pinches. You wish. Logan goes full-blown Cheshire Cat smile, and her brows pull together. He clicks his tongue and looks thoughtful. You remember Jacob? Your dumbass friend from high school? A quarter of the bro posse? How could I forget? He hums in acknowledgement. Yeah. Well, we were either drunk or stoned or, I don't know, something. And he wanted to give me a stick and poke tattoo. Seemed like a great idea at the time. Her mouth pulls up in the corner. It always does. She shakes her head exasperated. So what did he give you? Logan's mouth presses into a thin line, eyes looking to the heavens, as if to say, please strike me with lightning so I don't have to answer this question. However, after a beat of silence and no swift, vengeful flashes of lightning, he sighs, defeated. Sounds an eggplant. She skips right over a chortle, past a chuckle, and goes straight to guffawing, wheezing, clutching at her stomach as she tries and fails to catch her breath. No. Yes. Where? She can tell immediately this is another question he was dreading. One hand comes up to nervously push his floppy blonde hair back from his face, and she sees the muscle twitch in his jaw. My elbow. Her brow crinkles in confusion. Your elbow? He mumbles something, and she leans closer. I'm sorry, what? His cheeks go pink, and he manages to say through gritted teeth, my weenies. She doubles over laughing again, this time tears streaming down her face. "Logan? Logan? Logan? Dear Lord, how high were you?" "Very high, apparently." When she finally calms down, she closes the distance between them, fingers grazing over his forearm until she pulls his arm toward her. Her breath gets stuck in her throat and her chest feels a bit tight, but she shakes it off. Stupid Logan. Her weird energy is entirely his fault. She's sure of it. Focus, Louise. Ah, yep, there it is. The pad of her finger traces along the skin of his elbow, and she thinks she feels him shudder. She just grips his arm tighter. A little dotted eggplant that looks just a bit misshapen and faded. Horrendous work. Even for a high school stick and poke. It looks like a small child did it. Louise tuts, dropping his arm. "All right, come on." She ushers him to her station, closer to the back. She can't help watching him as he takes in her area, and she feels the color rise in her cheeks. What is he thinking? Point. About the custom Barobu card Rudy got her for her birthday last year. The framed hawk and chick poster Kojima had signed from her dad. The various Kuchi Kopi collectibles lined up along her shelf. The pinned album sleeves and scraps of old charcoal drawings, tacked up with care. Her station is a little part of her, and she's done her best to balance her tattooing kit and supplies, and all of her little trinkets and bobbins. It's her home away from home, showing a bit of her flair and style. But is it too much? Her throat is dry. She should say something. She should really say something. Wow. Logan breathes, hand moving to hover over crystal earrings hung on her little pegboard. Jean got those for me the last time they were at Burning Man. Nice. His eyes linger on one of her drawings. A charcoal figure sketch of a woman's form. All dips and curves with little peaks scratched for her nipples. She swallows. Hard. So, what are you thinking you want to do to cover your little eggplant problem? She pulls out her portfolio, an old black 3-ring binder, and pushes it into his chest. You probably won't need anything big. Actually, I was thinking of maybe doing something kind of large. Her eyebrows raise. Oh, but he looks away. She can't tell if he's trying to think or just avoid her gaze. But when he finally looks at her again, there's some sort of resignation there. Acceptance, and maybe just a hint of challenge. I want a half sleeve, ending just past the elbow. Her mouth drops open. A half sleeve? To cover up that little baby eggplant on your weenies? Logan rolls his eyes. Yes, but now doubt is creeping in. She's never done a piece that big on her own, but Marshmallow had said to book her own appointments. She shakes her head. No, this is out of her depth. She needs to refer to someone else who specializes in this kind of work. Listen, Logan, I'm just now tattooing on my own. Smaller pieces are fine, but what you're asking for is an undertaking. I'll get you set up with Marshmallow. She's way more experienced and... No. Silence follows, and she is suddenly taken back to that night of graduation. The intensity and earnestness in his eyes leaden with the weight of his feeling. It pulls her under. Oh, ever the fighter, though she's shaking her head. Logan, come on. I only want you. The words hang in the air for a long moment before he amends. To do the tattoo. His voice is cold as he draws himself up to his full height. Christ, is he even taller now? He has to be at least 6 foot, and compared to her 5'1", he towers over her, and then some. Louise is never one to take a challenge lying down, though. She puffs herself up as tall as she can muster, jabbing him with her index finger right into his stupidly fit chest. It's going to be a lot of time, a lot more money. Have you ever even... I know what I'm getting into, Smelcher. Save the lecture. Her eyes narrow. Do you even have the time to commit to getting a tattoo that big? A piece that size will take 15 hours minimum. So we'll do it over the course of a week, every day after I close. Ha! The derisive laugh bursts out of her. Your skin will look like my dad's best ground chuck. I don't think so. We'll do after you close the shop. 2-hour sessions, because I am not staying here all night, and at most once a week. Her arms cross tight over her chest, daring him to contradict her. It doesn't surprise her at all when he pushes back. Immediately. But that'll take... He calculates the math in his head quickly. 2 months to finish. That's how long it'll take, Logan. You need to heal in between sessions. You got a problem with that. There's the door. She points back to the entrance, eyebrows raised in challenge. He groans, scrubbing a hand down his face. All right. Fine. So when do we start? You got a design idea for this half sleeve? His brows shoot up. No, that's your job. She smirks. Trust me, you do not want me doing the design on my own. You'll just end up with an array of flaccid dicks. All shapes and sizes. It'll make that sweet little eggplant look downright cute. His lip curls in a sneer. You wouldn't. You know I would. The jut of his chin is more pronounced, but she's already rolling her eyes. Come back this time next week with at least a handful of ideas for this sleeve, or I won't work on you. Louise walks away, smug smile firmly in place. Victorious silence descends, and she knows she has won. But then, there's an echo of footsteps behind her, catching up. She manages to turn, and Logan is there, at her heels, hand extended to grip her roughly by the elbow. I'll be back next week, short stack. And when I am, there's no doubt in my mind. You'll be working on me. And damn it all to hell, even as the bell chimes to signal his departure, she feels the pulse in her cunt and the telltale wetness creep into her panties. Fuck him. Chapter 2. It's a gig economy, baby. Louise! Louise! She whips her head around. Huh? You're making that medium into a well done. Shit. Sorry, Dad. Bob lets out a deep sigh and tightens his apron. Why don't you go up front? Help your mother. These days he's a little thicker in the middle, a little thinner up top with streaks of white, but the same grumpy demeanor, same thick mustache. Louise rolls her eyes. Demoted. She grumbles and tosses the spatula aside. All right. Tina, Jean, and Louise had decided a few years ago they'd rotate through helping out on Saturdays as long as they lived in the area. Each sibling would rotate through and put in a shift on the busiest day of the week at the restaurant. After all, their parents were getting older. But one Saturday out of the month somehow became a weekly occurrence. Every Saturday without fail they'd all show up, the whole family working together just like when they were kids. Though it had started out as an impromptu event, now it was a staple. Their regular family get-together. Oh, do. And tonight, it's Saturday. Louise throws her prep cloth on the table, and her mother gives her the side-eye, lip twitching up and eyes gleaming behind her glasses. He kicked you out? Louise just glares, and Linda rolls her eyes. Bob, bye. Don't be a grumpy goose. If you alienate the kids, they won't come back for visits. There's grumbling from the back, and Louise thinks she hears a muffled, I can dream. Linda ignores him, turning back to Louise and handing over a stack of menus to wipe down before she turns back to prepping the silverware bundles. Louise grabs the stack, falling into a booth across from Jean, where they're refilling the condiment bottles. Mom, she grins fondly. I remember when you used to drink straight ketchup. Jean beams, waggling their eyebrows. You say that like it doesn't still happen, madam. Her nose scrunches in disgust, but a smile curves the corners of her mouth. Gross. What's gross? Tina asks, pushing along a broom before flopping into the booth beside Louise. Jean. Me. Tina's lips purse in contemplation. That checks out. So how's the shop, Louise? How's Marshmallow? Her mother calls, voice equal parts energetic and nasally. Louise gives a one-shoulder shrug, dragging a cloth over a menu. Good. Fine. You know Marshmallow, living her best life bossing her minions around. Same with Spectacular. Divas on the dock. Jean adds, flicking an errant crumb across the table toward Louise. The hot glue and tape is out of control. They sigh, hard-eyed and twitter-pated. Marshmallow's got so much joie de vivre. The queens fight over who gets to supply the glitter for her crown. Louise hardly avoids the launched crumb in time, but promptly crumples a napkin, chucking it at Jean's head. When is that, by the way? I'm assuming Cookie will be making an appearance. Louise admires her sibling for leaning into the drag life. It's always been their scene, And when Jean announced they'd be taking up the mantle of cookie secrets at the local drag club, no one batted an eye. Only 2 weeks now. June 10th. I'll pretend you didn't just ask such a foolish question. Louise rolls her eyes, and Tina pats Jean's hand. I'm sure Cookie will be the star of the show. Jean beams. We may be announcing Cookie's intent to headline this week, but they look around the sparsely patronized restaurant and lean closer to their sisters. Keep that on the QT. Louise huffs and Tina laughs before turning to her shorter sister. I saw Jess the other day, and she said Marshmallow was letting you book your own clients now? A shark's smile curves her mouth, all teeth and hunger. That's right. Finally, no more training wheels. Which is ironic since you two so long on the green muchie. Shut up, Jean. Louise glares. Well, that's great news, honey. Her mom calls from behind the counter. You hear that, Bobby? Our little girl's booking her own appointments now. That's great, Louise. Her dad calls half-heartedly from the kitchen. Lynn, can you take this order out? You can't sound a little more excited for your daughter's success? Mom! Louise groans. Lynn, Bob says at the same moment. I'm just saying, you could show a little more enthusiasm instead of being a mediocre melon. She grabs the burger and fries Bob placed in the window, drifting to one of the 2 customers in the restaurant. We're all very proud of you, Louise. Need to get your father in someday to get that awful nose and mustache on his back covered up. Lynn, you realize it's my nose and mustache you're disparaging? Bob asks as he makes his way back behind the counter. Linda's eyes shift surreptitiously, but instead her gaze flicks back to Louise, a pained chuckle escaping her as she switches the topic. So, any interesting projects? She doesn't even need to think about it, really. There's only one project that's on her mind. Actually, I'm doing my first half-sleeve design. Ooh, Jean gushes, fingers steepled before their face as they flutter their hands. Is that the biggest piece you've done? Other than the line work I did on a full back piece I did 6 months ago? I think so. This will be the first one I'm doing from design to final product. Her chest swells. She still feels like a bit of an idiot for feeling proud of herself, but the look in her mom's eyes and the excited crinkle of Jean's brow makes her forget her own hang-ups. Even Bob had stopped mid-inventory, looking at her with his mouth slightly parted in dazed surprise. So what's the piece? Tina asks, breaking the moment. Louise shakes her head, annoyed with her ego. She wipes the next menu a bit harder in penance, but her tone is still laced with excitement, even as she rolls her eyes. Logan didn't give me a lot to go off with his idea, so I had to send him off with design homework. But it's going to be... Hang on, Tina interrupts, hand held aloft to stop the flow of words from leaving Louise's mouth. She is looking at Louise with that dead-eyed stare of hers, the same stare Tina always has when her brain short-circuits. Logan? Bush? Fuck. Louise cringes. Fuck. No. I mean, yes, Logan Bush. But it's fine. He's just a client. Only silence meets these words. Louise throws her hands up in exasperation. It's no big deal. He's taking over at his mom's flower shop across the street for a few months and... Cynthia has a flower shop? Her dad asks, voice thin and high-pitched. Cynthia owns Smell the Roses? Her mother snarls, picking up a rag and angry cleaning a glass so hard, Louise fears it might shatter in her hands. She pushes on Tina, who moves out of the booth and slides out after her. Louise plucks the glass from her mother's hands and sets it down on the bar top. It's fine. Louise drawls again. Aren't you like mortal enemies? That was when we were kids, Jean. Jesus, people grow up. They change. Her whole family stares at her. Okay, well, maybe not like a lot. He's definitely still an entitled prick. But we're fine, and I need to build my portfolio. It's a good opportunity. Most people wouldn't want me to do such a big... Yeah. Why is he okay with an apprentice doing a half sleeve for him? Does he even have any other tattoos? Tina leans forward on the counter, and Louise doesn't like the accusing tilt of her brows. Louise winces. It's actually a cover-up. Tina pauses. Okay, kind of surprised there. It was from Jacob when they were in high school. Ah, Jean hums in understanding. So he was high. Jean, their parents admonish. What? Louise sighs, pinching the bridge of her nose. When she looks up again, Tina is pinning her with a hard, implacable look. But he wants you to do this piece. His arch-nemesis? Arch-nemesis feels a bit strong, T. Louise scoffs. Maybe arch-kitten. But now Tina is looking at Jean, and they look like they're trying hard not to crack a smile. A knowing smile. Hey, she says, finger pointing between the two siblings. Stop that. Stop what? Jean asks, sing-songy and so fucking infuriating she wants to wring their neck. Ugh, whatever. I'm out of here. The bell above the door rings as she exits the restaurant, and Jean and Tina smile. Bet? Oh, hell yes. Terms, Jean asks, and their mother rolls her eyes, tisking. Let them get there in their own time, you two. She pauses, scratching her chin, then adds, $10 they get together before the summer's over. $15 says they'll antagonistically hook up, Jean says quickly, mouth pulling up at the corner in a smug grin. I've got $20 on them admitting their feelings before the end of summer, and at least one of them will profess their love, Tina says, her face an inscrutable mask. Silence falls between the Belchers, the pop and sizzle of the grill the only sound punctuating the quiet. And then a long, beleaguered sigh emanates from the kitchen before Bob emerges, the bags under his eyes more pronounced in his advancing age. He pinches the bridge of his nose. You're all terrible. If Louise ever finds out, he trails off, and the other three just stare at him. Bob shuffles back to the kitchen, and they hear the clanking of pans. Linda, Jean, and Tina go back to their restaurant tasks before the clanking stops, and Bob raises his voice from the back again. $25 says Logan admits his feelings first, but Louise initiates a relationship. They all grin, wide-eyed and manic. It was going to be an interesting summer. She's just finishing up a clean, simplistic outline of a lion on a beefy dude's forearm when the bell at the front of the shop tinkles. In the corner of her periphery, she sees a mop of shaggy blonde hair, and her hand tightens momentarily. Fuck. Breathe, Louise. She exhales, grip loosening to a comfortable, controlled hold on her machine. Louise presses down on his skin and makes her final line, bold and black. The ink glistens and she smiles, switching off her gun and patting the guy's arm. All right, Mike, take a look. She tries to keep her focus on her current client, but she can feel Logan's eyes burning a hole in her from across the room. She growls in the back of her throat but refuses to look in that direction. Self-centered prick. All he can care about will bleed. She blinks several times and lets out just the smallest frustrated sigh. Sorry. What, Mike? His brow furrows noticeably, but he doesn't comment further on her inattention. I said, will I have to keep it covered up tonight? I've got a haul ass in the truck, but I don't really want cellophane on my arm for 8 hours of cross-country travel. Just need to know if it will bleed. Her lips purse. You know the rules. 3, 4 hours wrapped. Mike rolls his eyes, but he quickly reins in his reaction when he spots Louise's deepening glare. All right, but I'm unwrapping it at a rest stop on hour 3. Louise's eyes drift shut in annoyance, and she tries to remind herself, you can't fix stupid. Instead, she pastes on her fakest smile and obnoxiously sarcastic voice. Excellent life choices, Mike. So glad you're doing the bare minimum and uncovering a fresh wound in a place riddled with disease and infection. Truly top-notch stuff. His lips part, mouth hanging just a bit agape. Are you... God, shut your mouth, Louise. That'll be $85. The question dies in his throat as he pulls crumpled bills from his pocket, smoothing them on the counter. Exactly $85. Awesome. No tip. He's already walking out when she mumbles under her breath, entitled asshole. What a dick. The voice comes from the doorway where Logan is still standing, hands shoved deep in his pockets. He says it loud enough for Mike to hear, and Louise wants to groan. Why, Logan, why? What did you say, man? Mike says, voice a low growl. So, you heard me, dick. The lady probably designed it herself. Excellent work, despite the less than desirable canvas. She doesn't know when he moved or how he got so close without her realizing. But he's there, standing beside her, towering over her as he glares at Mike. Oh my God. Is Logan Bush actually upset about some other asshole being a knob to her? Her face must be twisted into a disbelieving sneer, because he just crosses his arms over his chest, face smoothing in trite apathy. What? I can't be affronted for you? He whispers to her, eyes still on Mike. It's a gig economy, Belcher, and that guy just ripped you off by not tipping you. Oh Lord, I don't need a white knight, Logan, she hissed between her teeth. Good thing, because I'm really lacking in the chivalry department. This is about justice. Mike isn't the brightest crayon in the box, and the zing goes over his head entirely. He did hear Logan call him a dick again, though. Fuck you, man. What's it to you? She your girlfriend or something? That did it. Her fists clench at her side. Mike, just get the... She has a name. It's Louise. Treat her with some respect. Give her a goddamn tip. Thank her for her service. And get the fuck out. Beefy Mike glares something fierce with his lip pulling back in a snarl. But Logan just straightens his spine. He uses his full height. Maybe he is closer to 6'1", but he's a lot more built than when they were kids. Louise gulps as Logan crosses his arms over his wide chest. Mike zeroes in on said muscles, and seems to understand this isn't a fight he wants to pick. Call off your guard dog there, Louise. He plops another $5 on the counter. Still a shitty tip, but something. Thanks, he grumbles, grudgingly as he heads for the door again. So, Logan nods, satisfied. Louise, however, grits her teeth. Her blood is boiling. Stupid Mike, stupid tips, stupid Logan and his dumb arms and nice hair. You didn't have to do that. And yet I did, Smelcher. So she's back to Smelcher now. She rolls her eyes and her jaw ticks in annoyance. Quit being so fucking smug and get back here. And you better have come with ideas this time. He follows behind her like a lost puppy, and she works on clenching every muscle in her body before letting the tension go. One muscle group at a time. See, face, neck, shoulders. I brought some printouts. I hope that's all right. He digs in his back pocket and fishes out several sheets of paper. Biceps, forearms, hands, and wiggling fingers. I thought about making a Pinterest board, but then I would have had to get Pinterest and... He inhales sharply, shaking his head. Honestly? Doesn't work with the vibe I've cultivated. Finally, they make it to her station, and she grabs her sketch pad. Her mouth starts to purse again, but she wills herself to keep her face relaxed. Don't tighten. Don't strain. Don't. I could have brought the iPad over and shown you on that. Mom's got an extra Air, actually. Old model, obviously, but I bet she'd let you have it if I... Oh my God. Do you ever just shut up and listen to the absolute pretentious, elitist bullshit that comes out of your mouth? She shrieks. Her fists are clenched, and she can feel the ridges of tightened muscle along her back and shoulders. So much for relaxation techniques. You always wanted to be some hood rat skater in high school, and now you're a burnout poser who wants a cover-up tattoo. So you can what? Prove to yourself you're a badass? Pretend to be alternative? Also, you can go use mommy and daddy's connections until you're handed some cushy corporate job where you don't even work, but make 10 times the amount I do. She's yelling. When did she start yelling? But the silence that follows her final words is deafening. The entire shop has gone silent to watch the exchange. Louise's stomach clenches. Fuck. But when she finally manages to look at Logan, she finds him looking carefully at his feet. A soft smile at the corners of his lips, like he's not at all shocked by her ripping him apart, like he deserves it. Fuck. He drops the pictures at her station. Oh, I thought the clock could work well on my shoulder, but don't worry about it, Louise. Sorry to waste your time. He dropped a $20 bill on top of the printouts. For your appointment slot I took. It feels like she's swallowed glue. Her throat sticks and the words are trapped as she splutters, trying to get something out. But Logan has already turned, walking quickly back to the front. Logan? She finally manages. It's too late, though. The bell dings and he's gone. Chapter 3. Apologizing is for suckers. Ceased to sissy. A week passed. A whole fucking week without Logan Bush being a pain in her ass. No snarky comments. Dumb nicknames. No making her stomach flutter or fists clench. She was miserable. No, she was pissed. Which is why, when Saturday rolls around again, and the next Belcher family workday commences, she isn't really on her game. Crash. Linda pokes her head out from the kitchen. Louise, did you just... But it isn't a groan so much as it's a feral, fury-filled war cry. These plates are trash. I keep telling you guys to... Hey now, it isn't the plates' fault you're all in a tizzy, Jean says. They sashay from behind the countertop, where they'd been entering orders in the new POS system. Louise glares as she snatches the broom and dustpan, shoulders slumping in defeat. She sweeps the offending pieces away in rough, rigid strokes. She avoids looking at Jean, but can feel their eyes, laser-focused, cutting through her. Would you stop that? She growls. Fucking hell. She sounds defensive even to her own ears. Oh, just one immaculately threaded brow arches and Jean's mouth purses, thinly concealing their amusement. Oh no, something's got you all out of sorts. No, I'm fine. But her teeth are clenched. She lets out a huff of frustration and dumps the glass shards in the trash. Oh, ooh, or is it someone? Louise feels her cheeks heat before she can tamp it down. She scoffs. Yeah, right. This wouldn't happen to involve Logan? Tina interjects. She passes Jean the order pad so they can enter the newest table's order. She takes a seat next to Louise at the bar, and Louise feels her body begin to coil, ready to lash out or fuck off. Neat. This has nothing to do with Bush. Why would you even think that? Jean and Tina share a disturbingly knowing look, and she wants to scream. Tina breaks the silence, careful and slow. Well, you have mentioned him 1 or 200. 1 or 200 times. Jean finishes. Louise's mouth drops open, and she takes Jean in, crossing their arms over their shirt with a plunging neckline. It's annoying how good it looks on them. Asshole. I do not. She seethes, but instead of waiting for a response from her 2 degenerate siblings, she makes a beeline for the back. I'm going to grind some meat, she barks at her parents, as she cuts through the kitchen to head to the basement. Bob and Linda look a bit bewildered by the announcement, and Linda barely gets out a, "All right, sweetie, before Louise slams the door and stomps down the steps. She's got her earbuds shoved in her ears under her beanie-blasting misfit by Revel. Stupid family, stupid burger shop, stupid Logan. She grinds with the fury and focus of Jean trying to sew on an extra strand of micro-sequins to their drag ensemble. Precise. Lip curling. Louise doesn't even register Tina standing a few feet in front of her, until she grabs another hunk of meat and lets out a shriek of surprise. She rips off her prep gloves and pulls out one of her buds, turning off the music. Ahaki, Jesus, T. How long have you been there? Tina shrugs. A minute or so. Shit. Tap me on the shoulder or something next time. You're giving real Jason vibes right now. Tina just continues to stare. Louise rolls her eyes, puts her gloves back on, and goes back to grinding. T. You're doing that weird stalker-murderer thing where you don't blink. If you've got something to say, just spit it out already. Tina's hands go to her hips. Oh, sweet Jesus. She's glaring. What happened between you and Logan? Louise just rolls her eyes again and scoffs in a would-be casual sort of way. For the billionth time, nothing. Bullshit. Louise pauses and turns the grinder off. Did Tina just swear? Don't give me that nonsense, Louise. I know you, so go ahead. Spill the tea. What happened? Weren't you going to do a tattoo for him? Louise's mouth purses into a thin line, muscles tightening. She looks anywhere but at Tina. A hiss. Louise! Fine. Louise throws her hands in the air, a tiny fleck of raw meat flying across the room. Oops. I was talking with him about his tattoo and he pissed me off. Tina just stares. It's fucking manipulative the way she can wait her out. And I may have yelled at him. Pause. and called him pretentious and elitist. Pause. All right, and I called him a burned-out poser. There, it was all out there now. Louise winces, finally looking up at Tina, who lets out a long sigh and pinches the bridge of her nose, which pushes her glasses up. She looks worn out, tired of Louise and her bullshit. And what, pray tell, did Logan do that evoked such rage from you? Louise bit the inside of her cheek. God damn it! He defended me. She mumbled so low, Tina leans forward. Sorry, he what? He defended me. Okay. There was a guy being a dick at the shop, and Logan put him in his place and made him tip me and... She's breathing so hard, eyes pinging around the room. Restless. He was just nice. And kind of mean to that guy. And it was unexpected. There's a beat of silence that follows this confession. And then Tina grabs her sides, leaning over, shaking and convulsing. TT, are you all Tina straightens, and Louise can finally see the tears of mirth in her eyes and the silent laughs that rack her body. She is laughing. Bitch, you're an asshole. You know that? I thought something was wrong with you. Tina gulps air and tries to tamp down her glee. Sorry, it's just... Oh man, you have it so bad, and that's coming from the girl who wrote novels of self-insert fanfic. Louise just glares, crossing her arms over her chest. I do not. Whatever you need to tell yourself, Louise. Tina finally wipes the tears from her eyes, straightening her glasses and asks, So, when did this happen? Louise huffs. Last week. And you haven't seen him since? I haven't even seen him coming and going from the shop. I think he's been using the back alley entrance to avoid seeing me. She admits, picking at her nails. Tina shakes her head. She actually tisks, but Louise's fierce glare has her older sister rethinking that move. So you want to fix this? Obviously. So go over there and apologize. Louise screams. Maniacal. Unhinged. Apologize? I don't think so. What for? It's not like I said anything that wasn't true. Louise, Tina's eyes narrow expectantly. You know you messed up, or you wouldn't be down here, avoiding everyone and actually working independently at the restaurant. Louise groans, a high-pitched whine. Can't I just do anything else? Tina just glares. Oh, fiend. Tina smiles and claps Louise on the shoulder. You got this. Your emotional maturity has come a long way. Ugh, gross. Don't say shit like that to me. But over the next few days, she can't will herself to go to the flower shop and just bite the apology bullet. It makes her tummy twist uncomfortably, like she's swallowed a bucket of eels. Instead, she leaves a coffee outside the shop in the morning. That sweetened bullshit from Starbucks she knows he likes. A shaken iced brown sugar espresso with oat milk and a pinch of cinnamon. What a basic bitch. The way she had mercilessly teased him when she found that out. One of his friends had outed his order on IG, and the taunting had been relentless. He'd blamed it on Cynthia, since that's what she always ordered. But come on. Now, however, he just leans into his horrifically bourgeois bullshit. Just last week he'd posted a selfie with his iced monstrosity with a princess tiara filter and the hashtag #StarbucksDiva. Idiot. But though she leaves it outside of the flower shop at 9, it remains out there all day. She checks every hour or so, but it's still there at 5. When he steps out to lock up for the day, he glares at it, pointedly throwing it in the trash can on the street. Bastard. Just accept the peace offering. She wants to scream at him. Louise tries again the next day, this time with a blueberry muffin. The crumbles on the top make her mouth water, and she mourns it, even as she puts it in front of the shop door and runs away. That one stays out there most of the day until the raccoons get it. She growls. The feral beasts munch happily carefully, picking around the wrapper, as her mother has conditioned them too. Those gremlins eat better than she does. On Wednesday, Tina texts her. Says T. You apologize yet? L. I mean, basically. T. So that's a no. L. Well, not with words. Actions are more important. T. Oh Lord, what did you do? L. calm down. I was nice. I got him coffee and a muffin. T. And the response was, L. T. Louise. L. He may have thrown the coffee away. He pressed T. T. And the muffin, L. King Trash Mouth the 3 got it. T. Just apologize, Louise. Your gestures clearly aren't working. Suck it up and apologize. Louise groans and throws her phone on the counter. She's at her station and tries to find comfort in her coochie kopi and her posters, but nothing's working. She heaves a sigh and flops onto her work surface, and her elbow slides out from under her, causing her to face plant. Ugh. She lifts up, shuffling things around, and spots the cause of her slip. It's a piece of paper, one of the printouts Logan had brought in for his design. She stares at it. It's a clock face, old and antique-looking, weathered and worn. She shuffles through the rest of her belongings at her station and tracks down the other printouts he'd left. A set of brass scales, a flock of birds in flight, sparrows maybe, broken chains, several different types of flowers in a variety of oranges, yellows, and greens, and of course, a beat-up old skateboard, his skateboard, with his dumb tool sticker and scratched pot-leaf carving from Scotty. Louise spreads them out across her station. She grabs her sketchbook, and she draws. Logan sprays the hydrangeas again. God, they're trying so hard to die on his watch, and he will not be responsible for his mother returning to dead stock. She'll throttle him. But more realistically, she'll lecture him. Probably make him do a charity 5K with her, and make him see her life coach. He shudders. Never again with Janice. Never again. He moves to prune the spider plant in the window display, and his eyes dart across the street. Before he can avert his gaze, he spots her. A cropped gray tank and olive green joggers slung low on her hips. Her back is to him, and he can't help fixating on the small of her back, the dip of her waist. Fuck. He rips his eyes from her, abandoning the window display entirely. He's been avoiding her ever since the incident. He shouldn't have done it. He knew he shouldn't have. Louise has always been able to defend herself. She doesn't take any shit from anyone. It's one of the things he grudgingly admires about her. Even when he was an absolute prick teen, she took none of his shit. But that day, his hand clenches at his side as he remembers. It was something about the way he saw her just take it. Powerless. She couldn't dish it out like she always did with that prick, because the douche still had to pay her. And then he tried to stiff her with the tip. Something in him broke. He got all defensive and protective and pissed. And for a moment he thought he'd come out of it unscathed. She'd kept the appointment. Took him to her station. But, well, he'd ruined it. Like he always did. When she made her feelings clear, he knew he had to pull back. Because, god damn it, Logan was starting to like her. Well, he'd always admired her, even when she was a scrappy, pissant little brat. But now, he realized, if he didn't pull back and stop pursuing this tattoo and spending all this time with her, well, it wouldn't end well. So he pumped himself up with his best pissed holier-than-thou armor and threw away every olive branch she offered. Besides, she didn't even have the decency to actually show her face, talk to him, apologize. He didn't owe her shit. Logan storms over to the arrangement station, determined to put 4 ears out of his mind. He takes a deep breath and starts putting together some bridesmaid bouquets for a wedding this weekend. Lilies, freesia, baby's breath, some sprigs of eucalyptus. But just as he's wrapping it in hydrating paper and twine, he sees a blur of pink, gray, and green flash by the front window. He glares. Great. Now what's the little gremlin left for him? Logan opens the door and the bell dings. No sign of the youngest Belcher. But something flutters as soon as the door swings, falling to the ground. A sheet of paper. A large sheet of paper that's been folded several times by the looks of it. He should just trash it right then and there. But something catches his eye. There on the outside in a small, neat script is, I was a bit of a... And damn it. His lips twitch and he lets out a pained laugh. Stilted and unexpected. What a... Logan opens it then, and his mouth drops open. All he can do is stare. It's gorgeous. He stares and stares, roaming the paper, eyes hungry for every minute detail she's incorporated, how it all works so beautifully together. And hidden there, in flowing script, is the quote he'd given her. Beyond fear lies freedom. His grip tightens on the edges of the paper, crumpling it just at the corners, and his brow furrows. Enough. He folds the paper, perhaps more carefully than he should, and marches across the street. It's an overcast sort of day on the wharf. The thunderclouds are thick and heavy, dark gray and ominous. There's a rumble in the distance as his feet slap along the pavement, until he's scaling the front steps of the parlor, fiery anger fueling him. Logan tugs open the glass door of the parlor. Marshmallow is there at one of the front stations, chatting with some patron who's clearly a returning client. They don't pay him any mind, continuing to chuckle together over the latest season of Love Island. He storms over to the front counter, where a bored-looking scrawny dude sits there flipping a magazine and popping gum. He's got gauged ears and spiked green hair, and he doesn't even look up when Logan stands at the counter. He taps the glass of the counter, and the guy looks up, slow and unconcerned. Yes? What a rude little... Where's Belcher? Green hair gauge guy sighs, rolling his eyes and flipping his page. Inventory, in the back. Logan nods, teeth gritting, and moves toward the back. Finally, the guy blinks away some of his apathy. Hey man, you got an appointment? You can't just... She's expecting me. He cuts across, not evening looking back. Wait, but he's already weaving between the stations. Some cluttered, some neat and tidy. He doesn't even register them really. Too focused on the path ahead. He finds her around the corner along the back wall. Stacks of inkwells, sterile packed equipment, gloves, and wraps strewn around her. She's sitting crisscrossed on the floor, shuffling through each pile, noise-canceling headphones perched over her beanie. Her head nods along to a phantom beat, and for a moment Logan just stands there, transfixed. He watches her sort and organize, black-painted nails stubby and just a bit chipped, tongue poking out between her teeth in concentration. Fuck. That's when she looks up at him and hastens to scramble to her feet, ripping her headphones off and shoving them onto one of the shelves along the wall. Logan, hey, hi. Did you? I left the It's the way that she looks at her feet and stammers. It's just so unlike her, he can't help but feel that surge of anger and frustration again. What in the actual fuck was going on? What the fuck, Belcher? He snarls, holding up the slightly crumpled paper in question. You shout at me and demean me in front of this whole shop. You refuse to speak to me and make some half-assed gestures of repentance. What the fuck? Her brow furrows, and now she's pissed. I was trying to fix things, you moron. I got you your bougie coffee and a blueberry muffin, and you turned your nose up at all of it. Probably because it's not fancy enough for the likes of Princess Logan. Oh, hell no. He took several steps closer, now looming over her, pressing into her space and making her squirm. She's tiny, maybe pushing 5'2", and he leans down thunderous. I didn't accept them because they're stupid empty gestures, Belcher. You fucked up. You knew you fucked up. You were a giant asshole to me and then you felt bad. But instead of... Hey, the only reason I reacted like that in the first place is because you got all puffed up and protective. I don't need you defending me to my clients. I don't need you defending me to any... Please, what was I supposed to do? Stand there and watch you roll over? Where the hell was all this fight with that prick who tried to stiff you? Sometimes it's not worth it, Logan. God, you're so irritating. Why did you even commission me for it? Why'd you ask me to do your tattoo? You knew it'd be like this. You knew we'd be at each other's throats. She breathes heavily, chest rising and falling rapidly, and Logan hates that his eyes travel down to her tits. Small and perfect, rising and falling with each breath. He tears his eyes away, but she's staring at his mouth, probably waiting for an answer. His heart stops. Because this is it. Louise is a handspan away from him, looking like that. All fire and passion, and it's too much. He loses all ability to evade, to lie and dodge. So horrifyingly he says, "You know why, short stack." And he turns on his heel and speeds back to the shop. He doesn't stop to look back. He can't bear to see how she might look as he walks away. Chapter 4. Enemies to what? Logan can't be gone for more than 10 seconds before her brain finally kicks back online. What the fuck? Is he trying to imply something? Is he saying what she know? Nope. Don't even go there. But the gears are already whirling. Her blood is already pumping in her veins. Fists and jaw clenching in thinly concealed rage. Louise likes to think that she has emotionally matured, as Tina so baldly stated earlier. But with the beat of her heart pounding in her ears and the heat blooming across her cheeks and chest, she doesn't wait for logic or reason. She doesn't give herself a moment or try to practice square breathing before railing the punching bag installed in the back of the shop. No! Instead, she shoves the remaining inventory to the side so that it's out of the main floor space, and her feet carry her to the front of the shop. Peter, who's running the front desk, looks up at the sound of her stomping boots, and the bored expression twists into something concerned. His green spiky hair quivers. "Louise, are you—" "I'll finish inventory tomorrow, but I'm done for the night, Pete." "Shouldn't?" But the bell rings as she exits the shop, looking around for that blonde-headed asshat. Of course, nowhere in sight. Coward. Louise's eyes zero in on Smell the Roses. The quaint little picket fence-style siding makes her want to scream or punch something. And of course, the beautiful hand-painted sign in the doorway with swooping calligraphy script reads, "Closed." She squints when something catches her eye, though. There, just beyond the baby blue painted trim of the windows, a light remains on. Her eyes narrow, and the fire within her burns. Her hate fire fuels her steps, feet slapping against the pavement as she hastens across the street. She yanks the door open, triumphant that he hasn't locked up yet, and the sweet tinkle of a gentle chime sounds. She growls up at it, tempted to yank it down, when she hears a call from the back of the shop. "Ew. Sorry, we're closed. Try back tomorrow at 10. Logan." Louise breathes heavily, and she makes her way to the back in 5 seconds flat. Logan is hunched over a back table, trying to work on some sort of arrangement, when she yanks at his shoulder, turning him around to face her. Hey!" he cries, before his eyes narrow when they register her. "What in—" But she doesn't give him a chance. Can't even let him have a moment to gather his thoughts. Her finger pokes into his chest with vengeance. Don't start, Bush. Don't even fucking start with me." He glares. "I didn't—" "So what is this? Some enemies to lovers trope fantasy thing for you? You want to fight me until we fuck? Is that it?" Logan's eyes go wide, and she feels a thrum of satisfaction when his cheeks stain a deliciously deep pink. Enemies to what? She wants to scream. God. Tina has deeply ingrained her romance tropes in the back of Louise's mind, buried deep, deep down, only to pop up at totally inappropriate moments like this. Her mouth pinches and her nose scrunches in disdain. However, when her chest rises with her exasperated sigh, and his eyes drop to her tits again, she mentally preens. He looks back up again quickly, but she grins, smug and contemptuous. Logan glares at her and swats her hand away. She hadn't realized she was still poking his chest, but instead of it falling back to her side, Logan reaches out, one large hand encircling her small wrist. His thumb brushes across her pulse point, and she hates that she shivers. He pulls her closer, and they stand almost chest to chest. Her breath hitches, and now Logan is grinning, a hint of victory making his eyes twinkle. Asshat. There's something here, 4 ears. She should pull away. She could. Just a quick little tug, and she'd be free from his hold. It isn't very tight. It's an itch that shouldn't be scratched, Bush. His eyes narrow, grumbling in dissent as his other hand settles on her waist. God, his hand engulfs a swath of her bare skin, from where her midriff is exposed in her cropped tank. Goosebumps break out over her flesh, and she grabs a fistful of his shirt, pulling him closer. He huffs out a laugh. "Miss, really? Short stack. Seems to me like you really want to scratch it. Louise growls low in the back of her throat, and Logan swallows, smug smile curving the corners of his mouth. He bends down, hot breath skating over her cheek, but she forces herself to angle her face away. One time, just get it out of our system. She can feel her brow pucker, and she hopes she looks stern, commanding. Logan's mouth hardens and his grip tightens on her waist, but she can't really tell if he's content or pissed. His jaw ticks and his brow furrows. Deal. Tattoo. Yes. You can't make it weird then. And no jokes about sticking or poking of any kind. His mouth drops open in mock horror. But Belcher, the puns! They're right there! Oh my God, I'm regretting this already. His hands clamp around her ass as he hauls her up, spinning her until her bum rests on the ledge of the table, and he's spreading her knees, slotting between her thighs. You won't. He nips at the juncture where her neck meets her shoulder, and something hot and liquid pools low in her belly. Fuck. Her eyes meet his. Dark brown meeting sky blue, and his mouth pulls up at the corner. Not after I'm through with you. Louise's eyes open wide, and her breathing stutters. But Logan gives her no time. His fingers are toying with the waistband of her joggers, as his other hand roams her body, following subtle curves and supple flesh. Where his hand leaves a trail of fire, his mouth follows, hot tongue tracing every sensitive point. When he nibbles at her hip as he cups her clothed cunt, she bucks into his hand. Fuck, Bush. He grins. Oh, I will. She rolls her eyes. You are not allowed to talk while this is happening. No can do, 4 ears. He pulls at her joggers, and she lifts her hips to comply, shucking her pants and panties to the floor. I want to see you blush when I get going. Me? Blush after some moronic frat boy lines? Fat chance. Shit. The pad of Logan's finger found the hood of her clit, circling it with firm pressure, and her knuckles go white where she grips the table with one hand. The other hand has somehow found its way tangled in his rumpled blonde hair. That's what I thought, Belcher. She tugs perhaps a bit harder than necessary at the strands, and he hisses, nipping at her inner thigh before dragging the flat of his tongue along the flesh. Her muscles tighten, and Logan pulls her further down the table until her ass is perched right on the edge. And then he kneels. He spreads her knees wide, and she feels so fucking vulnerable even as she drips for him. So wet. His tongue is just a gentle nudge at first, lapping at her with slow, steady strokes, fingers brushing her clit before pushing in. He pumps in and quickly finds a rhythm that has her rocking into him. She can't even feel embarrassed by the sounds escaping her, throaty moans she can't suppress. Unapologetically, she pulls his head closer, and god damn it, she is grinding against his mouth. Hot puffs of air along her slit. Her thighs are quivering, twitching in imminent release when his lips latch around that sensitive little bud and suck. Logan? She thrashes against him with bucking hips as she chases the high. It's like a coil tightens within her, wrapping so tight until the cord snaps. Her inner walls tremble as she falls over the edge and lets out a too loud moan. There it is, he says, smiling too wide, mouth still slick with her juices. That's my girl. I am not your girl, Louise growls, but she can't seem to muster much heat behind the words in her post-orgasmic bliss. Could have fooled me with the way you just came on my face. Shut up. He grins evilly at her, but his mouth abruptly drops open on a grunt when Louise undoes his pants at lightning speed and shoves her hand in, cupping his dick without hesitation. Jesus Belcher! A little warning. What's wrong, Logan? Did my pussy get your tongue? She shimmies his pants down so she can better grip him and, oh dear God, he's huge. She'd known he was tall, obviously, but she wasn't expecting this. He recovers just a bit of that cocky smirk and yanks at her top. Off. She shouldn't like it when he gets all commanding, when he demands things of her. But fuck it all. It's hot, okay? She stops gripping his cock and lifts her arms so he can pull her shirt up and over her head. His eyes almost pop out of his skull when he realizes she's not wearing a bra. Fuck, Belcher! You have the most perfect tits. Louise blushes fiercely, unable to repress just a small, self-satisfied grin. They're small, but they're perky, she thinks. One of Logan's hands comes up to thumb at her nipple, and her head falls back. But she refuses not to wring him dry too. She wants to see his eyes spark with pleasure, and for him to swear when he comes. She wants him to fall to pieces and lose his mind. Just a bit. So she reaches back, gripping him at the base of his shaft and strokes, up and down, taking her time with the flared head, the skin at the tip thin like cellophane. Soft as velvet. Logan groans again, like he is in pain, destroyed. A bead of pre-cum leaks from his tip and she stares at it, hungry. But before she can shift off the table, Logan snatches her wrist and pushes her hand back, his other hand digging into the flesh of her hip tight enough to zing up her spine and pulse in her core. Don't. Louise glares. What the fuck? I thought this was, if you bring that pretty mouth anywhere near my dick, I'm going to lose it. That shut her up. Her mind totally blanks. No witty comeback, no devastating rejoinder, but she's tapped, and Logan's fishing in his back pocket, until he pulls out a leather wallet that's been duct-taped back together. Seats, she hears the crinkle of a foil wrapper, and her ankles lock around his back in anticipation. Ready? Short stack? Just do it all. Oh! Her fingers dig into the meat of his shoulder, nails biting into his back as he bottoms out in one firm thrust. No time to adjust or accommodate. He is buried to the hilt, and dear Lord, the stretch is divine. It knocked the wind out of her on that first thrust, but by the time he's pulling out to plunge in again, she's ready for him. Her thighs tighten around his hips, and she rolls into him. Louise clutches the fabric of his shirt, holding on for dear life, as the table squeaks with every thrust. It's in this moment that she finally realizes he is somehow still fully clothed, while she is entirely naked. His pants and boxer briefs were just pushed down past his ass, while his shirt is somehow still on. Shirt, she demands, fingers scrabbling at the hem. His eyes widen, incredulous. Really? Now? Now! He rolls his eyes but manages to rip it over his head, with only a small pause in fucking her. How talented. Her eyes drink him in. Tall, lean, with muscles cording his shoulders and forearms. He isn't beefy, but he's firm, taut and defined in a way that makes her mouth water a bit. Like what you see there, Belcher. Just shut up and fuck me. As you wish, Your Majesty. He picks up the pace and... Jesus, she can feel his thrusts in her toes. Her body is unfurling, opening for him as he pistons his hips, hard and deep with every stroke, until she can feel her thighs twitch in anticipation again. On the next stroke, he finds a spot deep within her, a place she can never seem to manage alone with her vibrator, tucked up along that front spongy wall. Like a button, he presses it again and again, and she lets out an embarrassing, keening cry. Keat, have I found your kryptonite, Belcher? Fucking hell, is all she manages to groan out. One hand comes to brush across her nipple, so she arches her back, and he trails hot, open-mouthed kisses along her throat. He nips just at the juncture of her pulse point in her neck. Christ. Yes, she hisses. His thumb is back at her clit, rubbing quick little circles into the sensitive flesh, until she can't keep her eyes open. You gonna come on my cock, Belcher? What a fucking snot. But oh Lord, he has magic hands and a killer ass and... She throws her head back and rocks into him. He feels so fucking good. Pressing hot and hard and... Her walls are fluttering again, gripping him tight. Her body very much determined he should fall over the edge too. And he does. With a shout and a groan, he crumpled against her chest. Face dotted with sweat, he takes shallow breaths. Frozen in her embrace, dick buried deep within her. Enwhelmed. After a moment, he catches his breath and slowly pulls away. He's softening now as he unsheaths the condom and throws it into the garbage. Louise pulls on her top when he heads back over, looking so smug as he tucks his dick back into his pants. So, worth scratching the itch? She rolls her eyes and starts to back toward the exit. Fuck you, Logan. She flips him the bird and stomps to the exit. You already did that! But before she can make it out, he calls after her. Tattoo shop on Thursday? She pauses in the doorway, her back to him. She takes a breath that's hopefully fortifying. What has she done? Instead, she just says, 5:30, sharp. She hums to herself and tries to focus. Really, she does. Jean met her on the beach for their weekly shit talk, stone-skipping session just under the pier. But, well, she was distracted. Are you trying to just hold rocks? Are you silently deciding to pull a Sylvia Plath? Should I be concerned? Jean's voice cuts through any further reverie, and Louise shakes herself. She rolls her eyes, arms crossing over her chest. That was Virginia Woolf, ding-dong. Whatever. Sad lady author who off-ed herself. The point is, should I be concerned at your uncharacteristic silence? I just disclosed Fran's most recent embarrassing TikTok. Her eyes widened. What? What did he post? Jean shrugged, suddenly aloof, and Louise cringed. Oh, come on. Jean hefts a beleaguered sigh. He tried to do an addiction support group. Louise's eyes widened, bouncing on the balls of her feet. And he may have tried to do a knitting activity with said support group and shared the video. Louise's hands clench, vibrating with excitement. And the caption was, if you think I'm addicted, honestly, you're not wrong. She busts a gut laughing at Fran's latest hijinks and wipes a tear from her eye. Oh God, no. Oh yes. Jean nods, hurling a stone out to skip several times across the dark blue surface, mirror-like and serene in low tide. But why is that the second time I had to tell you that story? Oh no. Tread carefully. Oh, just distracted, I guess. She picks at her nail bed and is careful to look anywhere else but Jean. She zeroes in on the orange and pink hues of the setting sun along the horizon when she feels Jean's hands sandwich her face. Jean, what is this? They pull her face closer to theirs, peering into the depths of her soul as she tries not to splutter or blink. Finally, she wrenches herself free, mouth curving wide in triumph. But Jean's mouth drops open, hand reaching up to cover their mouth. Oh my God, you have sex face. Louise blanches, mouth somehow both bone-dry and sticky with saliva. What? Excuse me? I have what? Sex face, Jean replies simply. And dear God, the sheer smugness in their eyes. That little pull in the space between their brows. Fuck. I do not. She's all but yelling now, and her voice cracks, hands flapping about her in wild, disagreeing gestures. Jean inhales a little, on a thinly swallowed gasp. With Logan? Louise feels her eyes bug out as she clenches her teeth and grips her sibling's arm in a painfully tight grasp before hauling them with her under the pier. Would you shut up? She's near hysterical, and Jean looks so annoyingly overjoyed her face scrunches into a black scowl. How in the hell could you possibly know that? Jean just smiles. Sex face, they say simply. So you're not even denying it? Louise groans. Fuck. Oh, fuck it, fine. Yes. Okay? We fucked. Are you happy? Jean smirks. Immensely. Louise sighs, hands running down her face in a manner that was probably too aggressive. It might leave tracks from where her fingers dig in. But fuck it. You're infuriating. And you slept with Logan. They sing-song. Was it good? What are we dealing with? Length? Width? Any special leanings or oddly shaped appendages? Oh my God, you're the worst. Louise rolls her eyes and sinks to the sandy beach, pulling her legs to her chest and propping her chin up on her knees. There's a pump beside her as Jean sinks down as well. They nudge her shoulder with their own. So, wanna talk about it? She huffs an exasperated sigh. Not really. It was a heat-of-the-moment hate fuck. A one-time thing. Jean presses their lips together and nods. All right, sure. Louise turns and glares at them. Jean holds their hands up. What? I was agreeing. You're placating me. Youpie. Well, stop it. You sure? Jean asks, wiggling their eyebrows. Yes. All right. I think you guys might, perhaps be more alike than you think. Her whole face scrunches and she chucks a stone out across the water. It plunks in without a single skip. We are not. So you aren't both megalomaniac, stubborn assholes with secretly gooey centers? Ew! Gross! No! Louise hunches further in on herself, feeling sullen and mean while Jean laughs. Just do me a favor, okay? Her chin juts out, jaw clenching. What? Louise feels Jean's hand drop heavily to her shoulder and squeeze. Don't overthink it. And try not to run from something that makes you happy. Quit with the sappy talk. We just needed to get it out of our system. That's all. Now that we've done the deed, I can move on. I can't overthink something when there's nothing to think about. But even as she says it, she thumbs at the skin of her wrist, still burning from where he'd held her earlier. She shakes her head. There's nothing to think about. And she reminds herself of that fact as they walk back down the beach. Jean merrily rambling on about Alex's new video game and how Courtney landed a part in the local play. Her hand skims over her neck. Her pulse thrums and races under her touch, remembering how his tongue had felt pressed flat against her pulse point. She shivers. Nothing to think about. Chapter 5. Light the match. Louise feels her left eye twitch as she presses down into the woman's flesh, who's sitting in the hot seat today. The tattoo gun buzzes and she tries her best not to sigh. Well, not to sigh again. She's working on an incredibly original tribal tramp stamp. The blonde prattles on, even though she's face down on the table. So I told Ricky he needs the new Jaguar instead of the 19. And do you know what he said? Deep, calming breaths. That's what she needs. Imagine your happy place, Louise. She thinks of the places she's been. That monastery in Tibet, the mountains of Nepal, the bustling streets of Thailand. But as Stacy continues on about Ricky's general disappointments as a partner in the most annoying nasally drawl, her thoughts somehow land back on the wharf, standing along the pier and watching the waves come in. She can almost hear the gulls and feel the mist of ocean spray on her face. Her heart slows and her fiery rage abates to a simmer. Without fail, it's the image that always calms her down. Just focus and get through. Brying. Louise's head snaps up and she presses down just a bit too hard into Stacy's back flesh. The woman grunts, story abruptly coming to a halt. Son of a... But Louise tunes her out, gaze narrowing on the open door of the shop. Short, dark hair, a bit mousy. Her grip slackens around the tattoo gun as she releases the breath she hasn't realized she's been holding. She pats Stacy's love handle. All right, you're all set there, Karen. The woman glares. That's not my name. Course it isn't. That's just the fun little nickname I came up with for you. Stacy's, Karen's mouth pinches, brow furrowing. It's kind of rude. Louise nods but offers no apology. Instead, she reasons, you did get a tribal tramp stamp, so I reserve the right to poke fun and publicly shame you. Stacy scoffs. Whatever. Maybe this is why she gets shit tips. Her brows twitch up. Meh. Worth it. It's jobs like this that have her crossing her fingers Felix's new gallery pays off. Several months ago, Mr. Fishoder had goaded Felix into buying the space that used to be the Wharf Arts Center, back when she was a kid. After the economic collapse of 2008, it had shut down. Arts are always the first thing to go. This is a fact Louise has been made painfully aware of since their art classes started getting cut in middle school. People are assholes who don't appreciate art and culture. Fucking idiots. But when the Fishoders had stopped by one fateful Saturday afternoon to collect rent, Calvin was already blustering at Felix, needling and prodding his brother that he was an uncultured swine with his minuscule 12-bedroom mansion and disappointing lack of any sort of art collection. Felix had spluttered and replied, "Stop calling it minuscule. It's perfectly respectable. Besides, I wouldn't keep my art at my home like a peasant. I'd maintain my collections at a gallery." Calvin scoffed. A gallery? You wouldn't know the first thing about art or maintaining a gallery. You don't even know how to drive a golf cart or order a vintage scotch. I do too. Do not. Do too. Fortunately, Linda had interjected. It's too bad the old Wharf Arts Center went under. Such a nice little gallery. What a waste. Lynn, It had 2 exhibits and the director was embezzling. Bob chimed in from the back. Still, it was nice to have some beauty around here besides me. She guffawed at her own joke, but a manic gleam entered Felix's eyes. I'll buy the Wharf Arts Center. Remake it into a brand new luxe gallery with elegant trim and ornate sconces. He trailed off, wistful and wanting. Calvin was skeptical. You're buying a gallery with your pocket money? That just feels irresponsible, Felix. His brother's face went red, lips downturned in a petulant pout. Don't tell me what to do, Calvin. Mr. Fishoder knew when it was a lost cause with Felix. He sighed, holding his hands up in surrender. All right. Don't say I didn't warn you, though. And please limit yourself with the number of installation pieces you allow. Or need I remind you of the cow's teat fiasco? They left bickering and blustering, but Louise felt her heart clatter in her chest. A lump in her throat made it impossible to articulate words. It was a chance, her chance, to have her art hung up on display instead of walking around half hidden under other people's clothing. Stacy gasps when she peeks over her shoulder in the full-length mirror they keep in the shop, bringing Louise firmly back to the present. Stacy's eyes light up, all annoyance forgotten. It looks great! Happy to be of assistance. Louise deadpans. Don't let anybody sweat on it for the next 2 weeks. Stacy doesn't even register the offhanded slight. Of course! The front bell dings again as someone opens the door, and she knows before even looking who has just walked in. Because it's Thursday, and it's precisely 5:30. On the dot. She clenches her jaw and forces herself to keep her eyes trained on Stacy, nodding as she prattles on. She can feel the heat of his gaze, though, and it makes the hair on her arms stand up. She forcibly swallows. She needs to get through the aftercare with Karen. Stacy, whoever this chick is. Keep it wrapped for the next 3-4 hours. Only touch it with clean hands. Louise's eyes flit up and meet his, and it feels like she's been struck with lightning. Electric and blistering. She wrenches her gaze away. And only wash with antibacterial soap. This is technically an open wound right now, and can easily get infected. Be sure to keep it clean and... Her eyes drift to him again. The asshole has his elbows propped up on the counter, leaning back, and the way his t-shirt pulls across his chest. She shakes her head. Focus, Louise. Be sure to apply ointment. I left some at the counter that's good for aftercare. Stacy is nodding, oblivious to Louise's inner battle to keep her eyes on the curvy brunette. My skin's a little sensitive. Do you think the ointment will... But Louise can't help herself. She looks at him again, only to find he's looking directly at her, eyes roving over her body, with a smug little smile tucked into the corner of his mouth like... Excuse me? Stacy is looking at her like she's lost her mind. Louise blinks. Sorry, what was your question? Stacy lets her eyes roll and flutter in annoyance. Will the cream have any side effects? I have eczema and I don't want to flare up. Oh no, it'll be fine. The ointment has been tested and is actually used to decrease swelling and inflammation, so eczema shouldn't be an issue. Stacy beams. Great! They both stand there awkwardly for a moment, until Stacy clears her throat expectantly. Well, should we go get the ointment? And check out? Louise feels herself turning beet red as she shuffles to her station, throwing the hand mirror she'd let Stacy use back in her drawer. Yeah, of course, she grinds out. Louise stomps ahead, leading Stacy to the front. But fuck her. That's where Logan is draped over the counter. He looks like he's moments away from bursting into laughter at her spluttery, incoherent idiocy. Louise glares at him, mouthing "shut up," and violently slashing her index finger across her throat. It just makes him grin more, and Louise angrily turns back to Stacy. That'll be $60 today, plus the ointment will bring you to $76.25. Stacy hands over her card, and Louise is just about to run it when Logan speaks. What'd you get? Stacy eyes him for a moment, taking in his height and the way his forearms are crossed deliciously over his chest, before she turns and hikes up her shirt, dutifully showing off the most basic tramp stamp. Louise glares as she jams the card into the reader. Logan seems to be looking carefully at the design, eyeing it, or is it Stacy's shapely ass, appreciatively. Very nice. Tribal tat. Classic. I thought so, Stacy says, eyes cutting to Louise frostily. Louise knows her mouth is twisting into a snarl as she practically shouts, "Did you want to add a tip?" Stacy looks scandalized. Logan is biting the inside of his cheek to keep from laughing. Louise shifts her beanie to give her hands something to do. Yeah, all right, Stacy says, reluctant. She types in her PIN and an amount before finishing the transaction. The machine spits out a receipt as Louise hands it to Stacy, along with the ointment. "Here you go. Thanks for choosing Ink About It for your—" But Stacy clearly isn't listening, and the words get stuck in Louise's throat before she can go on. Stacy is using one of the pens from the little stormtrooper head mug on the front counter. She's scribbling something on the back of her receipt, something that looks suspiciously like... Stacy smiles at Logan, popping the pen back into the mug and shoving the paper into his hands. "Call me sometime." Logan blinks in shock for a moment before returning the smile, slipping the number smoothly into the pocket of his jeans. "Thanks." Stacy winks before walking to the exit, hips swiveling a bit more pronounced than Louise remembered from when she walked in earlier. Louise wants to rip her throat out, but manages to ball her fists into her side instead, trying to slow her breaths. In, out. "You all right there, Four Ears?" Her lip almost curls into a snarl, but she wills her face to smooth, dispassionate, unaffected. She can do this. "Fine," she practically shouts. The corners of his mouth turn up, and he leans closer. "Yeah? You look a little..." He searches for the word, drumming his fingers on the counter. "Tense." "I'm fine." She's gnashing her teeth as she whirls around to stomp back to her station. "Please tell me you brought the sketch." "Of course I did. I'm not a total noob." Logan follows her back, just a few paces behind. Louise fully expects him to pull the drawing she did for his tattoo from his pocket. Crumpled, ripped, and stained, but somehow she missed the leather folio he must have brought in and set off to the side. But now he's gripping it in his hands, thick and black as he unzips it. His hands are careful and precise, pulling the sketch out gently. Such tenderness for something. She reaches out, practically snatching it from his hands. "Get a grip, Louise." "All right, so let's talk placement. How do you—" But her mouth goes entirely dry. Logan has grabbed the hem of his shirt and tugged it over his head before she can finish her question. Her mouth hangs open, staring at the smooth planes of muscle and... Dear Lord. Does he have abs? Sweet Jesus, he does. And there's a dirty blonde happy trail that disappears, just below the waistband of his low-slung jeans. How you had the clock face at the top. That could be a good place to start. At the joint where my shoulder meets my chest. What do you think? She tries so hard to quell the flush that's creeping over her face and chest. Louise clears her throat. Yep, yeah. Makes total sense. Her hands fumble over the stencil paper as she begins to section off the first element. The clock face. She breathes out as she puts on her gloves, squeezing a bit of stencil cream onto her gloved finger. Louise swallows hard when she turns back to him. But damn it, this is her job. She is a professional. She drops her shoulder back and approaches him, and she thinks maybe he's holding his breath when she reaches out, one hand curling around his bicep to hold him steady, while the other smears the cream into the meat of his left pectoral up into the divot just below his shoulder. She can feel the muscles flexing, taut and tight. Relax. She breathes into the space between them, but he's so close. She can feel the heat emanating from his skin, the shallow rasp of his breath along her cheek. She has to take a few quick breaths before she can steady her hands enough to reach for the stencil. She presses it along the ridge of his clavicle down to just above his peaked nipple. He does his best not to move, but the tension is thick, palpable and pulsing. God, she has to do something. Say something. This is... So what do all of these things mean to you? She practically shouts at him. Logan blinks at her, eyes finally sliding to hers as he scrambles to form words. Well, they all sort of mean different things. She nods. lifting the contact paper off and checking the stencil placement. Finally, she's slipping into work mode, letting everything else fall away as she reaches for the tattoo gun. Yeah? One of her hands holds firmly to his shoulder, and she can feel him trying hard not to move. You can breathe, you know. I'm not going to impale you with ink. He snorts. You'd impale me any chance you got, Belcher. Only when you're being really annoying, which is basically all the time. So fair. But I'm on the clock. A consummate professional. He goes rigid with the first press of the needle, and her thumb swipes along his clavicle. Breathe. Tell me about the tattoo. Logan is staring off across the shop, or maybe out the window, but he forces himself to suck in a slow breath through his nose and out his mouth. She feels his muscles relax a bit further when she traces the stencil with the gun again. The needle sings and hums, forming the dark outline of the clock face when he finally speaks, teeth gritting in pain. It's time running out. Louise presses along the line, allowing the outline to begin taking definite shape. But only the buzz of her gun fills the space between them after his explanation. A pause as she works, trying not to enjoy the feel of his warm flesh under her gloved hands. A question niggles at her. Running out on what? He doesn't respond at first, and they sit in pained, stilted silence as she works, wondering if she fucked it all up. Maybe she should change the subject? Maybe she should take the piss and make him glare at her. That feels safe. That feels... life. Louise blinks. When did you become so emo? It works. He cracks a smile. Says the girl who listened to Wubby too much pop punk growing up. Hey! She jabs a gloved finger into his chest. I won't apologize for that. Haley Williams is a goddamn American treasure, and I will rip your testicles off if you challenge me on this. A laugh escapes him and Louise pulls away just to be safe. The tattoo gun goes silent, and she dabs the ink away, still grinning. So what then? Peter Pan syndrome? Newsflash, Bush? You've got to grow up sometime. He nods, but the smile slides slowly from his face, and quite suddenly he looks much older, not the perennial miscreant she usually sees. He's got a 5 o'clock shadow and a furrow in his brow, and he looks lost, weary even. One of his hands comes up to push back his hair, fingers carding through the blonde mop. I know, but I just didn't think it would be like this. Like what? Everything decided, my life mapped out and set. Louise sits back further, confused. What do you mean? He hesitates, jaw ticking for a beat before he lets out a sigh. My parents have made every decision about my life. What college, what major, what minor, what frats to pledge, and what on-campus organizations to join. Her mouth drops open, just a bit, but Logan keeps talking, the words coming louder and quicker. They got me the best tutors for the LSATs and decided which law programs I should apply to, and now I can just see how everything else will play out. Degree, internships, corporate law, company partners. He swallows and Louise watches his Adam's apple bob in his throat. She doesn't know what to say. How could she? She's always worked and her family just barely scraped by growing up, but she'd always been free to follow her own path. What Logan described, it sounds like a fancy gilt cage and clipped wings. Why have a bird if it couldn't fly? So instead of speaking, she squeezes his arm and turns the gun back on. The buzz is a welcome, warm sound after such a confession. For a while, she works in silence, Logan gritting his teeth and pinching the fabric of his jeans to combat the pain. She should change the subject. Go back to something easy. But even as she thinks it, her nose crinkles and she can't help but ask, why don't you just quit? He's quiet for a moment and blinks in shock. I can't. Oh, why not? He lets out an indignant snort. You're joking. They've paid for my school, called in favors, pulled strings to get me where I am. I can't just walk away. Louise frowns, pushing the needle back into his skin so that he groans. Do you want to be a lawyer? He glares, but his mouth remains firmly shut, and it remains shut for the rest of the session. They finish in stiff silence, with Louise dabbing the ink from his skin and handing him after care information. He takes it without comment and heads for the door, before Louise can even snap off her gloves. Next Thursday, Bush, and follow the instructions. But she doesn't make it to Thursday before she sees him again. It's one of those days where she knows right from the moment she wakes up, it's going to be a shit day. There's a crick in her neck from sleeping awkwardly on her pillow, and she stubs her toe as she stumbles into the kitchen looking for coffee. Motherfuck, Louise grumbles, limping and massaging her neck as she makes it over to the counter to find no coffee. She lets out a little scream of frustration, fingers digging into her face. She needs to get dressed and get out of this accursed caffeine-free apartment, so she haphazardly throws on her clothes, gingerly getting ready so she doesn't further injure herself. But when she leaves, it doesn't get much better. They fuck up her order at the coffee shop. Tina bails on their plans because she has to go with Zeke to some family emergency or something. She tries to recoup her time by catching up on some necessary adult life stuff, but the bank is closed. They're backed up at the express oil change, and the laundromat has a big fat closed sign due to a roach infestation. And she's a day late on her rent, and her landlord texts her some passive-aggressive, "We seem to be missing your payment" bullshit. By the time she drags herself to the shop, she's ready to sink through the floor and absolve herself from giving any further fucks. But she needs to buckle down and get through this appointment. She needs the money. Just as she moves to start prepping her station, Marshmallow comes back. "Bad news, sugar. Your appointment just called to cancel." Fuck. And there went the last of the rent money she needed. Louise clenches her fists and grinds her teeth, but she manages a tight nod. "Yeah, all right. Anything I can do around here to just pick up base hours?" Marshmallow's brow crinkles skeptically, and Louise adds, soft and pained, "I need the money." Marshmallow sighs, hand coming to rest on her hip, her eyes glimmering with pity. It makes Louise sick. "Why don't you prep some starter boxes, baby?" Louise nods and heads for the back. "All right. At least it's something. Maybe it'll be enough to scrape together the last of the rent." After an hour of plodding through supply prep, she gets a call. She almost drops her phone in her haste when she sees Felix Fischoder's name light up her screen. Oh my God. Her work! The gallery! Her heart thuds in her ears, blood roaring through her veins. "Felix, what's the word?" "Well, hello to you too, Louise." She rolls her eyes but pastes on a fake smile and dons the same syrupy, sweet-toned Chloe frickin' Barbash she used to use to con her way through Wagstaff. "Hi, Felix. How are you? Any exciting news? Do tell me about all the inner workings of—" "All right, a light." "Geez, you are the worst suck-up. Not even remotely convincing." Louise can't even care, though, bouncing on the balls of her toes. This is it, the moment. He acquired the Arts Center 3 months ago, and she'd pitched her portfolio to him last month. He'd even looked excited. But there were details to work out, and he hadn't really said yes. So this is the moment, and it couldn't come soon enough. She needs to display her work. Maybe she'll sell a piece. And then another. And soon she could be getting commissions and breaking into the local artist scene. Then she can— I'm afraid it's not going to happen, Louise. At least not for a while. Calvin seems to think, but she stops listening. She can't listen. She can't think. She can't feel. Quite suddenly, she has gone rigid and numb, a dismayed statue frozen in rejection. Well, thanks for trying, Felix. She doesn't even wait for a response before she hangs up. She stands for a beat. 2. Until her hand balls into a fist and she lets it fly into the back wall. There is the crunch of bone meeting hard plaster. It fucking hurts. Louise pulls back, cradling her hand. She's not sure if she's going to weep or swear or fight someone. Her mouth pulls into a snarl. Fight someone? She knows just who she can pick a fight with and fuck it all. She can't take the feelings of worthlessness, of disappointment and insecurity that burrows in her chest, like a goddamn cat curling up and making its home. Ina. Fuck that. She'd rather light a fire and burn everything to the ground than suffocate in a pit of despair. Now, to find the person who'll light the match. Chapter 6. Loose lips sink ships. What a day. Logan's keys jangle as they clatter to the counter of his parents' kitchen island. There had been no point getting his own place for his short stint back at the wharf. A couple of months while he kicked around his hometown and watched his mother's shop while their sizable house sat vacant. It didn't make sense to get an apartment. Still, it's a strange mix of nostalgia and claustrophobia. Staying at your parents' place as a fully actualized adult, he feels like he can't quite take a full breath here with the carefully fluffed pillows and artfully decorated den. It makes his skin itch staying here, like he's wearing a second set of skin that doesn't quite fit his body. Logan shivers at the thought and moves down the hall. He needs a shower. He peels off his clothes, acutely aware of the strong smell of fertilizer and earth clinging to him. He'd had a dozen new shipments of starter plants, seed packs, and ceramic vases of all shapes and sizes. It had taken him hours to get everything unpacked, organized, and settled into the various new planters, starting some from seedlings and others from infancy, and then the arranging and displays. Logan sighs, wrung out as his feet pad along the pristine white hexagonal tiles so often featured in those horrendous home renovation shows. His mother's obsessed with them, and he shakes his head, perturbed. But he reaches out and starts the hot water, making sure it's piping hot before he steps in. The burn and sting of the little pebbles of water soothe him, though his flesh starts to turn red. He grabs the hypoallergenic soap Louise had recommended for aftercare and carefully lathers around the fresh tattoo. It's been 5 days now, and it's looking much better. It's not red and puckered or bleeding ink like it was when he first washed it. It's actually looking mostly healed. And for that, he's grateful. It'll make the next appointment easier. It's a good thing Louise told him only weekly installments, though. The pain and the healing process was more time-intensive than he'd thought. His mouth quirks when he thinks of the way she glared daggers at him when she bit his head off and point blank. Told him she wouldn't do more than once a week. She's a fucking firecracker waiting to explode, and he can't help tossing out matches to see what will catch. He thinks of her pink mouth pursed in contempt, the set of her jaw when she thinks she's right, how her hands come to her hips when she's had enough of his bullshit. It shouldn't surprise him that his dick twitches at the thought. God, is he a skis-ball for getting turned on just thinking about her getting pissed? It feels dangerously close to dirtbag territory. Oh, fuck it. He's definitely a dirtbag. Logan's hand palms his cock as he thinks about her little tits bouncing as he fucked her against his prep table. Oh, God. It takes less than a minute. Blood rushing south and making him so... Knock, knock, knock. Logan blinks, hand stilling on his dick. He turns the shower off, not daring to breathe as he listens for any sound. Knock, 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 knock. It's a little more insistent this time, and he gets out, grabbing a towel and hastily drying off. He shoves his feet into some clean boxers and pulls on the first clean t-shirt he can find. Ah, sissy. Knock, 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 knock. Coming, geez. Hold your... He yanks open the door, and there, standing with her hands balled into fists at her side, looking like she might murder a whole litter of kittens, is Louise. What the... You know what's mind-numbingly unfair. She screeches without preamble. She pushes past him, stomping through to the living room like she owns the place. Logan does his best to keep up, padding across the hardwood floors in his bare feet until he stands some 3 feet away from her. He reaches for an empty pizza box on the counter, trying to covertly hold it so it covers his erection. Jesus, what timing! She's practically vibrating with rage. Is he supposed to respond? Is this some sort of test? Fuck. He's been quiet too long. He clears his throat, but her eyes incinerate him on the spot, scorching with anger. Nah, people like you, mediocre white men, will have everything handed to them, while the rest of us have to fight and scrape for every goddamn morsel that comes our way. And even then, we're passed over. Again and again, while you're spoon-fed promotions and scholarships and fellowships and chances. Why? You're not better than me, not smarter or more hardworking, not more resourceful, and yet here we are, you, on the precipice of a spot in a prestigious law school, and you probably did fuck all to get there. You are the one who gets every fucking chance, and you don't even want it. Louise's eyes are wide and wild, and Logan's mouth drops open, horrified to see her eyes getting glassy. Oh dear Lord, is she going to? But she shakes her head sharply and looks away. He has to say something, anything, but words get stuck in his throat, and any boner that he'd been nursing was well and truly deflated now. He tosses the pizza box aside and swallows hard before he stammers, What? Well, Louise's head whips back to him, dark curls flying from the sudden movement. She stomps over to him in 3 short strides, finger poking into his chest as she stares up at him. It isn't fair. It isn't right. And fuck you for being part of the fucking problem. Logan reels for a moment, and then, are you blaming me for misogyny? For white privilege? Colonization? Corporate America, perhaps? She glares at him, stony and unrelenting. Why up? Me. One person. Responsible for generations of fucked up systemic problems. Through gritted teeth, she says, That's right. Holy shit. Am I God? Have I stepped into an alternate universe where I have limitless powers? Her mouth pinches and her hand balls into a fist. His mouth waters. Take your top off. Louise snarls at him like an angry tabby cat, fierce and feral. Fuck you. Logan holds his hands up in defense. Just testing my omniscient, godlike, all-consuming power. It seems to be faulty, though, because your tits remain covered. Her arms cross over her chest, and she looks like she's going to bite his head off. She takes a step forward, but for the first time her eyes land on his chest, and she halts, mid-stride. Dear Lord, are you kidding me? How pathologically narcissistic do you have to be? He looks down and, well, okay, fair. Her response is fair. In his defense, he'd gotten the shirt to piss off his mom after she'd stonewalled his attempt to be in a club in college that wasn't pre-approved. She had not been amused. It's a black t-shirt with a Red Cross-style emblem in the middle, and above it, in big, blocky typeface, orgasm donor. Logan shrugs. If I recall correctly, you didn't have any complaints. Fuck. You! Louise shoves him and he stumbles back a step. She could have shoved harder, but she'd held back. He blinks. So something got your panties in a wad there, Belcher? Everything's fine, she replies, voice dripping with sarcasm. Yeah, okay, sure. Logan moves to the fridge, rooting around momentarily before pulling out 2 beers. He cracks them open, handing one to her before taking a long drag on his. The tang of the hops and the bubbles of carbonation dance over his tongue. You seem super logical and calm right now. Even keel. Do you meditate? I must get the name of your yogi. Jesus fuck, Logan. You're so annoying, and I'm so mad at you and every other shitty white man who's fucking it up for the rest of us. She approaches again, though miraculously doesn't shove him. Instead, she puts down the beer bottle and her hands come up. Logan braces himself for a slap, a kick, a punch, but instead, he feels her fingers thread along the hem of his stupid t-shirt. Get your hands up. But, without waiting for a further response, she yanks the shirt up and over his head. Oh, let's see you. Just don't. Her palms slide along the curve of his jaw and into the divot at his collarbones. She presses a biting, devouring kiss into his chest before her fingers trail down to the waistband of his... Wait a minute, he chides, gently stepping back and prying her hands away. What the hell is going on? One minute you're yelling at me, the next thing you're fondling me. I thought this, he motions between them, was a one-time thing. Louise glares before digging her nails into his shoulders and pulling him down to suck bruising kisses into the ridge of his collarbone. He's already half hard and knows he doesn't stand a chance. Self-preservation is quickly plummeting. His hands clamp around her hips, slotting her flesh against his erection, and they both groan. Are you complaining? She gasps into his neck. I know, I'm just trying to keep up with your rules, short stack. Well, I'm changing them. I had a shitty day and I need an orgasm. He mumbles into her throat. She's wearing a flannel over a little black crop top today, and he takes his time, pushing the flannel from her shoulders, fingers trailing along the flesh of her arms. She shivers and he smiles. Are you saying you need an orgasm donor? Dear God, I take it back. You're the absolute worst. Oh! Logan has her cropped shirt hiked up, pleasantly surprised that she isn't wearing a bra. He thumbs at her nipple, and she arches into his touch, while his other hand skates up her leg under her leather mini skirt. Jesus Christ! Her thigh feels so warm and smooth. So what's the new deal then, 4 ears? You want me to fuck you when you've had a bad day? His fingers trace the gusset of her panties, and he can already feel the wetness waiting for him there. Hot and pulsing. Louise's hands thread into his hair, nails raking along his scalp just enough to make him even harder. God, he needs some relief, so he rubs his length along her thigh and hisses. She gets the hint and palms his shaft through his boxer briefs, stroking his length with her small hand. I guess, she says, voice cracking around the edges as he slips a finger between her slick folds. Yeah, right there. Logan pumps his finger in, on a slow, steady rhythm before adding another finger. Louise's face is pink, brow shimmering with a sheen of sweat, and she taps his shoulder. Okay, fuck me. She means it as a command, but she's too breathy, trying to part her legs further to take more. She's demanding, insatiable. Instead, he pulls his hand away entirely, shifting so that his body pins hers to the kitchen island. She whines at the loss of his touch, but he grips the base of her neck with one hand and traces along the hinge of her jaw with the other. Her eyes flutter to meet his, deep and dark, and for the barest moment there is something earnest there. The wide-eyed expression of uncertainty, fear, hope, but it flits away before it becomes clear. Logan tips her chin back, cradling her face in his hands, and drops his mouth to hers. Just a brush of lips. What are you doing? Louise asks, hot breath ghosting across his lips. Kissing you. But we're hate-fucking, not... I don't know. She adds with a shrug. Who says you can't kiss and hate-fuck? He drops his mouth to hers again, this time parting his lips and licking along the seam of her mouth until she gasps. He nibbles and gently suckles at her lower lip. Her hands are fisted in his hair now. It just feels like we shouldn't. It's too personal. Logan laughs, nose trailing along her cheek. Too personal? Belcher, I had your clit between my teeth last time we got together. I think a little kissing will be all right. Her nose scrunches in that way he can't help but think is adorable. She's so irritated with him, and he loves it. He can't help that she's cute when she's mad. Besides, he adds, licking along the shell of her ear and causing her to tremble again, it's my condition. I'm happy to give you orgasms when you've had a bad day, but I want to kiss you. She rolls her eyes but pulls him closer. She's holding him so tight, like she's afraid the moment she lets go he'll disappear. Fine, but this is strictly fucking, okay? He nods quickly, only too happy to agree. Of course, Belcher. Louise narrows her eyes, skeptical. Good. And then she grips the back of his neck, pulling him down and surging up on her toes, devouring him with a fierce, feral kisses. Logan presses her back into the island until his hands drift down, gripping her ass and hoisting her on top of it. He's got her skirt and panties off in a second, as Louise pushes his boxer briefs down with her feet. Logan pulls her to the edge of the counter, tugging her into his arms, and she grasps his shoulders in alarm. What are you doing? I want to fuck you in a bed, short stack. Is that too much to ask? So needy, she says with a wicked grin. I'm a man of refined tastes. She laughs. You literally have a shirt with the word orgasm printed on it. He gasps in feigned shock. The people have to know. I'm a giver. Louise rolls her eyes hard at that, and he throws her back on his childhood bed. A queen size, thanks to the fact he'd gotten so tall in high school. Her hair fans out around her like a halo, and he can't stop his breath from getting caught in his throat at the sight. Logan kneels on the bed before her and reaches for her ankle, gripping the delicate bones there as his thumb traces along a tattoo, a trailing vine that winds around her ankle and turns into barbed wire. Sharp and precise. Logan, but his hands push up her legs and spread her knees apart, and he kisses her there, at the dimple in her knee, the soft flesh of her thigh, the divot of her hip. She tries to pull him up, hand tightening around his bicep. Come on! Her whole body is flushed now, and there's the hint of a tremor in her leg as it jostles with nervous energy. But he shakes his head, pressing fingers into her warm heat and watching her arch off the bed, adding his mouth, tongue brushing out to taste her sex, catching the sweet arousal of her on his tongue. I can't just give you a quick fuck, Louise. I'm gonna take my time with you. Watch you come apart. Make you beg. She tries to snort with derision, but he presses the flat of his tongue along her clit, and her whole body goes tense. Keyed up, she says, "You're not gonna make me beg, Bush." Logan smiles so wide, like a goddamn Cheshire cat. We'll see about that. He laps at her clit and thrusts with his fingers until she is a panting, gasping mess. She fists the sheets and he looks up at her, taking a moment to watch her starting to unravel. And then he pulls his hand away, sitting back on his haunches, tracing gentle patterns into the flesh of her thighs instead. Louise's eyes fly open. What? Hey! I was so close! Logan just grins, nibbling at the juncture of her hip. She tries to guide his hand back, to shift her hips toward him. He palms her pussy, letting her rock against the heel of his hand. But she lets out a strangled cry. "Logan! You know what I want to hear, Belcher." She practically screams in frustration, making to grab for his achingly hard dick. But he shifts away, just out of reach. God damn it, Bush! But Louise surprises him, rising up on her knees in a flash and pushing him onto his back, throwing her leg over his waist and pinning him there. He doesn't even have a moment to react before she is rubbing her slit along his cock and... Fuck, he hisses out. And oh, holy shit! The self-satisfied smirk she has is too much for him. God, he could come from that alone. Triumphant, with her palms on his chest, hair wild, and radiating dominance, she smiles so that almost all of her teeth show, wide and hungry. "You like that, Bush?" "Fuck yes," he responds instantly. His hands automatically reach for her thighs, gripping so tight to try and calm himself. Deep breaths. Deep breaths. "Condoms?" she asks. But his brain can't form words while she's rubbing herself along his dick. He manages to point to his bedside table, and she leans over. There's a crinkle of foil, and then her little hand reaches for him, stroking down his length firm and fast and sure. Before he can reach out and stop her to keep himself from coming, she rolls the condom on. Logan tries hard not to grip her hips too tight, but holy shit. Louise lowers herself onto him, inch by inch, and he is convinced he's going to pass out. She is so wet, so tight, and he can already feel the tingling in his sack. God, he wants her. He bites into her shoulder before laving the mark with his tongue, tender strokes to ease the bruising flesh. When she's taken him fully, they're both panting, hot little gasps of air. Logan sits up, shifting them further up the bed so his back is against the headboard. Louise begins to rock into him, pulling herself up slowly before rolling her hips to meet his. She grips the headboard, using it for leverage and shit. She is gorgeous. Sweat clinging to her brow and chest flushed. His eyes catch hers, and he draws her down, cradling her jaw. He kisses her, open-mouthed, tongue sliding between her teeth, and she lets out this breathy little moan as she shifts into him so that he's buried even deeper, and he knows he's going to get himself off to that sound later, when he's alone and lonely, when she decides that she's done with him, because she's made it clear that whatever this is, it's temporary. With that thought weighing heavy in his mind, he grits his teeth and snaps his hips into her, starting up a punishing rhythm. He wants to crush her, claim her. But she's never been one to submit. Louise rides his thrusts, matching him beat for beat until he is rushing dangerously close to his pinnacle. "Come on, Four Ears. Come for me." Louise grits her teeth, that little stern pucker in her brow reminding him of just how stubborn she is. "Please," he adds. Her eyes meet his, and she slows her movements. She cups his jaw in her hand, pulling him to her, and for a moment he thinks he is going to be devoured with tongue and teeth, biting and sucking. But she opens for him, slow and languid, tasting. Dare he say tender? The world slows for just a moment as she cants her hips into him. The drag of flesh on flesh somehow feels even better, deeper and more intimate. She rests her forehead against his, breaths mingling as she lets out a rasping groan, and he feels her walls flutter around his cock. And fuck it all. Her spasms draw him to the brink in a moment, and he tumbles over the edge after her, breathing ragged and wrung out. He presses a final kiss to the corner of her mouth as they both catch their breaths. He thinks he sees her smile, just for a moment, but then she drops her hands from where she had cupped his jaw and pulls away, sliding off him and padding softly to the bathroom. Udines. And he feels cold. This is good, Louise thinks. They have established exactly what this is. A little fucking around, no strings attached. Exactly what she wants. She's loath to admit it, but Logan is good at making her come, so she'll keep him around, if only for that reason. Thursday. He comes in for his tattoo appointment as usual. No funny business. Strictly professional, though he does seem a bit more reserved. If Logan can even be reserved. He's less obnoxious at least, and for that, she's grateful. 4 days after that, he texts her. Logan, text 1. Logan, text 2. 2 days later, Logan text 3. Logan text 4. Logan text 5. Logan text 6. 2 days after that, Logan text 7. Logan text 8. Logan text 9. A few weeks of casual fucking when either of them has a rough day is fine, right? No strings attached. Great orgasms. And though she doesn't want to admit it, it's been fun. A little sneaky. A lot horny. Fun. Jean and Tina have been relentless with their skeptical looks and downright opaque questions. And she hates lying to them. Truly, she does. But is it even really lying when they ask her things like, "Are you dating anyone?" No. No, she's not. "You seem calmer. Happier. What's up?" Just a new workout. "Who are you texting?" Nobody special. Everything is going great. Until it all comes crashing down. Louise and Logan are climbing onto her bike, a 2014 Harley with peeling leather seats and a burly V-twin engine, to head to her apartment. Logan's going to cook them dinner while they watch American Ninja Warrior and fool around on her couch. They're laughing together because Logan says some dumb shit, and Louise elbows him. His eyes are full of mischief as he catches her around the waist and pulls her back against him. She doesn't even hesitate as she reaches back, pulling him down by the neck, as she twists on her seat to catch his lips in a hungry, greedy kiss like she's done 100 times at this point, crushing and claiming. That's when they hear the squeaking gasp, the little huffed, "Oh!" of shock. Louise turns, horror-struck, mouth gaping wide as she sees the telltale worn green fanny pack and crumpled pink blouse disappear around the street corner. She squeezes her eyes shut in defeat, and Logan stares at her, clearly confused. What? She holds her breath and clamps her fists shut tight so her nails dig into the meat of her palms. That was my blabbermouth aunt. Fucking gale force winds Gennaro. Louise huffs out a sigh. I'm willing to bet we won't even make it back to my place before she tells my entire family we were sucking face. Logan's eyes go wide. Well, shit. Yup, shit. Chapter 7. The best laid plans. I knew it. Lynn, you've got to Didn't I tell you, Bobby? Didn't I say? Jean jumps in, hand on a hip and bobbing their head emphatically. I'm pretty sure you all owe me. Oh? Oh? Louise barks. An emergency family dinner was convened at the Belcher household within 15 minutes of Gail spotting Louise and Logan on the street. The rat. Louise cringed when her mother called her, shrieking into the phone that they had to have a family dinner right now. And when Louise asked if Aunt Gail called and if that's what this was about, Linda just chuckled with that not at all able to contain secrets laugh, before stuttering out a very unconvincing, "Wah! No, of course not." But within moments of arriving at her parents' apartment above the restaurant, a very poorly concealed attempt to ask her about her romantic life began to spiral, resulting in this stellar, not at all harassing or demeaning interrogation. Louise glares so hard, teeth gritting and fists clenching, before she asks, "You bet on whether Logan and I would get together." "Well," Bob begins, but trails off, looking around to the rest of the family for help. Linda cringes and looks away. Tina just nods and Jean shrugs. Louise's whole face pinches in disapproval. "Great. Juiced great. Well, joke's on you guys because we're not together." Tina's brow furrows. "But Aunt Gail saw you together." Louise rolls her eyes. "She saw us getting on my bike. That doesn't mean we're together." Jean nods appreciatively, but Linda's eyes go wide. The woman actually has the audacity to gasp. "Does that mean... Oh, what are the kids calling it these days? Is it hooking? You're just physical?" She seems pained by the question. "All right, I'm gonna go check the chicken," Bob announces, quickly departing back into the living room. "Oh my God, Mom, it isn't hooking. It's a hookup. Okay?" Louise struggles to keep her voice even. "It's just sex, and I don't see what the big deal is. I also don't see why it's anyone else's business, so keep your noses out of it." "But Louise," Tina says, "it's Logan. This is Logan Bush we're talking about. Your sworn archenemy for all time." Louise glares. "Have you never heard of the term hate sex? But Gail said you two were smoochin'." Linda protests, brows drawn down in challenge. "Whoa, whoa, whoa! I thought Bush was just after your bush. You guys were lip-smacking, Frenching, canoodling at the mouth." Jean practically shouts. "Oh, my God, it's none of your business." "And he was getting on the back of your bike," Linda exclaims, arms thrown in the air. Christ almighty, they were relentless. Louise manages an almighty sigh, hands flat on her face, dragging the skin down in exasperation. Could she claw her own ears off? She might try. So, you're like, spending time together?" Tina adds. And dear Lord, that smug look behind her spectacles. Well, truthfully, Tina's face doesn't change all that much. She's stoic as always. Bitch. But Louise can just feel the glee behind Tina's disaffected tone. "We were going over to my place to hook up." Louise relents, albeit with a very snarky tone. "Didn't he have a bag with him?" Linda asks. Sweet Lord, Gail is more observant than Louise gave her credit for. "Well, he was also making me dinner, and may have been bringing over his Jet Li DVD collection." That admission is met with utter silence. A pin could drop and it would sound like an explosion. Her family, minus her father, all stare at her with wide, unblinking eyes. It's unnerving. "What?" Louise finally barks. Jean holds their hands up. "I'm not saying it." They retreat from the room without saying anything further. Tina just shakes her head aggressively before she bolts, calling over her shoulder, "I'm gonna see if Dad needs any help." Louise turns to her mom expectantly, but there is something like pity shining in Linda's eyes. "Oh my God," Louise groans. "You guys are acting like I just announced my impending death by 1,000 paper cuts. What is it?" "Sweetie," Linda begins gently, moving off the couch and coming to grasp Louise's hands in her own. Louise instinctively pulls away, batting her mother's hands aside. But Linda just steps in, wrapping a gentle hug around her youngest daughter that's warm and too comforting for her to fight off. Her mom smells like burger grease and bargain laundry detergent, and that cheap citrusy Mary Kay perfume. It is so homey and comforting. Even in her family's apartment, where so many things have stayed the same, it's hard to feel nostalgic. She feels like she's never really left, but still, she doesn't remember the last time her mom held her like this, the last time she let her hold her like this. Linda strokes her hair and says, "I think you know this isn't just a hooking. Hook up." She grumbles softly, but there is no fight left in her tone. Linda ignores the reproof entirely. "You like Logan." Louise wants to be belligerently indignant. She wants to fight and deny. But she can't help thinking of that big blonde idiot, and fucking hell, is she smiling? What a sap! "Get it together, Louise! Stop this right now!" So she pulls away and crosses her arms and builds those walls up brick by brick again, because not only does she not want this to happen, it can't happen. "Mom," It's not like that, okay? He's leaving. Linda's face falls, just for a moment, and it tugs at something in Louise. But she straightens, shaking it off. It isn't a big deal. It's nothing. It's just meaningless fucking. A fling while he's in town. It's nothing. It's nothing. It's nothing. Dinner's ready. Bob calls from the other room. Louise turns to head into the kitchen. But just as she's about to breach the doorway, Linda adds gently, "That might be the plan, Louise, but the best laid plans." She leaves the rest unsaid. But for a moment, for a single solitary moment, Louise lets her heart stutter around that kernel of hope, tripping and stumbling, momentarily reckless and unafraid. But with a gulp of air and the clenching of fists, she shoves it deep, deep down. Unable and unwilling, she forces a not at all sincere smile. Whatever, it doesn't matter anyway. He's an idiot. Linda squeezes her shoulder, and they join the rest of the family around their same small round table. And Louise lets herself get caught up in her siblings' antics as Tina regales the family with news that a literary agent finally called her back, and Jean's latest blocking for their new drag number. Her dad offers some blustery reproofs, but smiles gruffly when he shares that Mr. Fishoder isn't going to be increasing the rent this year like he threatened to. Her mom rejoices through yet another made-up song, and Louise can't help the fond smile that creeps across her face. No matter what this thing is with Logan, at least she's got these idiots to fall back on. Another week passes. Another week of homemade dinners, casual jokes, some mild pranking, and so much mind-blowing sex Louise feels like she can't walk straight. She'd rather die than admit that to Logan, though. Her family blessedly has left off the conversation of Logan, with the exception of some bemoaned sighs from Tina and some suggestive eyebrow waggling from Jean, but fortunately no one has used the B word around her. Just thinking it makes her queasy. Boyfriend? In reference to Logan fucking Bush? Gross. Stop it. No. Louise is 100% A-okay with their arrangement until one day, when everything inexplicably comes crashing down. Sentoses. Louise grumbles deep beneath the covers and tries to nestle in further to block out the light streaming in from the window. She heaves a frustrated groan, and the bed dips under new weight. She cracks an eye and peeks out from the lumpy comforter. Coffee? Logan holds out a cup of steaming dark liquid. Louise unburrows herself and blinks in the light, allowing her eyes to adjust. The mug is warm, and the coffee smells rich and full-bodied. She sips it and moans. Logan's mouth curls into a smile. Added a scoop of brown sugar and a dash of cinnamon. No milk, though, so it can stay black. Just like your heart, he finishes. But the way he pats her knee and his mouth is still spread wide in a smile, she knows it's with fondness. Louise glares and sticks her tongue out. You're an idiot! An idiot who knows how you take your coffee. She rolls her eyes, but he just stares at her, grinning. Her brow furrows. What? You know what I want. And fuck it all. It shouldn't make her heart beat a little fast, and her panties get a bit damp. Louise presses her thighs together under the blanket, but manages to say, Yay, thank you, Logan. Oh, wonderful, magnanimous, generous human. How can I ever thank you? Logan chuckles, but his eyes go dark. His hand snakes under the covers and grips her hip, thumbing at the exposed jut of her hip bone. I can think of a few ways. Her mouth drops open just a bit, and she feels the rush of a blush stain her cheeks. She's just about to snark back and possibly make him beg for her mouth when he pulls away and withdraws from the bed, but not before dropping an entirely too chaste kiss on her jaw. Afraid it'll have to wait till later, though, 4 ears. I gotta go see a guy about some azaleas. Louise's mouth turns down, and she knows she's pouting, but she can't help it. Skip it. Can't, Sugar Plum. It's a big shipment for a wedding this weekend. Cynthia demands perfection. She purses her lips, but disputes no further. Instead, she throws the blankets off herself, revealing only her ratty crop top and tiny briefs that show off a rather scandalous amount of ass cheek. Louise pads toward the bathroom, tugging the shirt up and over her head as she goes. Fine. Tend to your flowers, she says, dismissive. Logan splutters behind her, and she strips her briefs off when she gets to the bathroom door. Finally, he finds his voice. "What are you doing?" She turns to him, fully nude, and watches as his eyes rake over the length of her body, pausing somewhere around her pert tits, the swell of her hips, and the valley between her thighs. She grins, victorious and primal, before she responds. "Just showering. By all means, go deal with your flowers. I'll see you later, Bush." And with that, she snaps the bathroom door shut. From the other side of the door, she hears a strangled growl, followed by Logan calling, "You'll pay for that, Belcher." She laughs, a warm, gratified bubble expanding in her chest. She feels like she can float like one of the sudsing bubbles of her body wash. She can't wait to pay for it. Louise watches the little cedar and spice bubbles of her soap float around her, happy and humming with promise, until a large bubble drifts just before her face and bursts. Suddenly, and without warning, she stares in the space it used to be, feeling momentarily bereft, before twisting away to rinse the soap off. When she steps out of the shower later, Logan is gone. But still, that promise lingers in the air. Louise leaves her apartment with a spring in her step, humming just a bit under her breath. Today is going to be great. But when she gets to the shop, Marshmallow stops her. "Hey, baby." But her deep, soothing voice is sad, repentant. "What is it? What's wrong? Did the supplier fuck us again? I swear I'm going to rip his throat out and—" Louise rages, but Marshmallow steps in. "No, it isn't about Jeb and his shitty customer service." She pauses, taking a long, suffering breath before she says, "You got a complaint last week. Really pissed white-collar prick. Nearly lost the client. Fortunately, I managed to sweet-talk him into switching artists." Louise drops her bag, mouth opening in indignation. "Are you serious? What kind of—" But Marshmallow holds up a firm, dark hand. "No sugar. You listen. And you listen good. I like your sass. I like your moxie and your razor-sharp humor. You're a hell of an artist and so reliable. But you can't cost us clients." The words die in Louise's throat. She tries to swallow, but an unexpected lump forms, and she struggles to articulate anything. Marshmallow squeezes her shoulder and says, "I'm taking you off the books for a week, other than your standing weekly appointment with your boy toy." Louise's mouth is dry as sandpaper, but she forces out, "Marshmallow, please. I can do better. And he's not my boy toy. I'm just—" But fuck it all. What is she just? Words escape her, and the room seems to shrink. It feels so small, like it might suffocate her. She sucks in a sharp breath. Marshmallow's eyes are soft and full of reproach. "Take the time and figure your shit out. All right? Keep your slot with Bush and we'll see you on Monday." So what choice does she have? Louise snatches up her bag and without another word marches back out of the shop. She supposes she could go to the restaurant, or maybe Tina's apartment, or the shop Jean works at. But she finds herself beating the familiar path across the street, going around the back alley to slip in and avoid any too friendly customers. She can't deal with that right now. Louise shuffles in amongst fertilizer and mulch, piles of different ceramic and terracotta pots, to creep closer to the front. She hears Logan's voice, prattling on to some needy, dysfunctional divorcee, probably. She pushes the door open just a crack to see if he might need rescuing, and instead is a bit shocked when she sees a wall of white. White hair, white suit, and when he turns, she catches the eye patch slung over his eye. Calvin Fish Odor. Her mouth tugs down in a sharp, decisive frown. Odd. And then she catches part of their conversation. "You're quite sure about this? Your mother," Mr. Fish says, in that strange, meandering drawl of his. But Logan cuts him off. "I'm sure. It's the right thing. The right move." Mr. Fish hums in agreement. "Law school is quite the feather in your cap. But if you're sure—" "I am." There's a note of finality in his tone, and the pit of Louise's stomach drops out. She doesn't know why this is bothering her. This isn't new information. Logan was always going to leave. That had been established from the beginning. They weren't anything, barely even fuck buddies. Former arch rivals turned bone buds. but her eyes sting all the same, and she wants to punch a wall or someone's face. Preferably Logan's. Before she can even move from her spot, though, Mr. Fish goes on, "You know this is going to crush her." "What the fuck?" She grits her teeth hard. So hard she thinks they might crack under the strain, and she can't even care. Louise is going to kill her mother for running her mouth to Calvin Fishoder of all people. Jesus fuck. Why did everyone suddenly know her business? And why did anyone care what the two of them did? And they aren't even anything, so why should it matter? She'll get over it. Logan's voice is cold, hard and aloof, and for the first time it really hits her. How little all of this has meant to him. It's like a flaming takana to the heart. It knocks the breath out of her lungs, and before she knows what she's doing, she's backpedaling out of there as fast as her feet will carry her, because she can't stay here and listen to any more of this. Louise jumps on her bike, hardly revving it before she's hauling ass away from the flower shop and the tattoo parlor. Every painful thing that's happened in the past 2 hours. She meanders aimlessly down some of the backcountry roads before stopping at one of the more secluded beaches. She throws stones. She screams, but it doesn't help. Not really. Her heart still hammers in her chest, and her lungs never seem to expand fully. After hours of shame spiraling and some honest-to-goodness self-loathing and anger articulating, she runs out of steam. Her throat is sore from yelling. Her eyes hurt from the tears she has very determinedly not cried. And instead of intense anger or sadness or hurt, all that's left is this dull, throbbing ache just behind her ribs. It twinges painfully in her chest every now and again to ensure she remembers she still feels. But it's that hollow, broken sort of feeling when you get picked last in dodgeball again. A bit numb, achy and lonely and deflated. So finally she drags herself home. When she walks in the door of her apartment that evening, there is the tang of soy sauce and the sweetness of honey, thick and aromatic. Her mouth waters immediately when she gets through the door, even though the dread and anxiety and ache of the day prevent her from feeling actual hunger. Goodness. But why does she smell food? She didn't. As she rounds the corner, though, it's clear. There he is. Logan, in one of those stupid t-shirts. This one says, "I'm sorry I roasted you. I was trying to flirt." He's gotten out the rice cooker and has Mongolian beef simmering in a wok. Saki is heating on the stove, and her chest expands, hot and tight. "Lou? That you? Hope it's all right I came in and got dinner started. I didn't see you over at the parlor today, so wasn't sure if you had the day off. But when I came by..." His voice fades as she gets hung up on a few key pieces of information. Logan is in her apartment. He used the key she gave him. She gave him a key. When had that happened? Why hadn't it felt like a bigger deal then? And he's making her dinner. Logan is making her dinner. Like it's casual and expected. Part of their normal routine. Her mom's words from a week ago echo in her head. "I think you know this isn't just a hooking." And, "You like Logan?" But then she's back in the flower shop, and he is saying quite coldly to Mr. Fish that she will get over it. The dissonance of the two statements makes her feel like she's in a game of tug-of-war, about to get a fucking arm ripped off. Quite suddenly, everything is crashing down around her. A world of realization and feelings and fuck. He's supposed to leave in 2 weeks. 2 goddamn weeks. She's suspended from work. She doesn't matter to him. And it's all too much. "What are you doing?" she asks, voice high and thin, like it's been stretched too tight and it may snap. At her tone, Logan looks up, pausing for the first time in his cooking endeavors. His brows furrow, confused. "Just making dinner, short stack. Figured you hadn't had time." It feels like her body is seizing up. Her muscles go rigid and the breath freezes in her chest. But in a moment the word spews from her, bitter and harsh. "Why?" Logan's mouth twitches up, like he might laugh, like he thinks she's joking, and she wants to punch him in the throat and maybe cry. Just a bit. Because he's so stupid and shockingly sweet to her, and she absolutely hates him right now. "What's got your panties in a twist?" He tries. And God fucking damn it! She feels her eyes getting glassy, and she blinks rapidly to clear them. Stop! 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 Shut it down, Louise. But she can't. Or she won't. She's not even sure, to be honest. But she practically screeches at him. What are we doing? Dead silence follows, except the gentle sizzle from the walk. Logan's eyes are wide and he swallows thickly. He turns off the walk and approaches her like a wild rabbit, slow with hands outstretched, scared she might run, or do something so incredibly stupid. Hey, 4 ears. Easy, okay? What do you need? Should I? He reaches for her, but she pulls further back. If he touches her, she's not sure if she'll run or jump him, but the thought of either makes her stomach twist painfully. She has to keep a clear head. She has to plow on. They've been living in this fucking fantasy for too long. You're leaving Logan. Her voice is deadly calm. In 2 weeks. And what in the fuck are we doing? This has gone way too far. This was supposed to be casual. Hate sex. A hookup. Nothing more. But you're here. Using my keys. Cooking me dinner. She's yelling now. And she's so frantic her breath is coming in pants. Like she's run a goddamn marathon. Logan. Casual, himbo, frat douche. Logan is looking stunned, speechless. And then horrifyingly his jaw clicks closed and he looks away. Some unreadable emotion darkening his eyes. I thought maybe this was... But he pauses, unsure what to say, and she doesn't even need to hear it. Can't stomach the words she knows are coming. So she beats him to the punch. I'm a placeholder, Logan. You're going to be a big-shot lawyer. You'll earn $1 billion and have a fancy yacht and sit in a boring office with a fucking trophy wife. I'm just keeping you warm while you're stuck watching your mom shop. His eyes widen, horrified. What? You can't be serious. Is that honestly what you think? That I'm just biding my time, fucking you because you're convenient? Newsflash, Belcher, you aren't the easiest person to be with. But I'm here and I'm trying. You're leaving, Louise shouts. She clenches her jaw, grinding her teeth. Every muscle in her body is corded tight. All she wants to do is run, run, run. But they're in her apartment. So she does what she has to do. She braces herself, sucking in a breath to steady her voice, to ooze calm when she says, and that's all it ever was to me. Convenient fucking. Good sex. Nothing more. Logan's eyes bore into hers like he can't quite believe what she's saying. She squeezes her fist so tight her nails bite into the meat of her palm before she goes on, cold and cruel. I can't keep playing house with you and pretending like this is anything else. You're leaving, Logan. Best to end this before somebody goes and does something stupid. Before anybody gets hurt. Logan stares her down for another moment, before his eyes cut away, staring somewhere far off, mouth already tugging up like this is some sick joke. She knew this wasn't anything. She knew it was all an act. For one brief, shining moment, she feels like she might be vindicated. But he runs his fingers roughly through his hair, before letting out a hoarse yell. Fuck! Logan drops his hands to his sides. He makes sure everything in the kitchen is turned off. He walks over to her, eyes shining bright. Louise thinks for a moment he's going to touch her, or try to reason with her, but he just holds her key out to her, and instinctively her hand reaches out. Their hands graze when she takes the key, and it's fire in her veins all over again. But Logan's expression is dark, haunted even, the ghost of a twisted smile lingering at the corner of his mouth. Too late for that, he says, almost so soft she doesn't catch it. And then, just like that, he's gone. Chapter 8. So long, 4 ears. Summary. A glimpse of Logan's POV from the past 2 weeks leading up to his fight with Louise. 2 weeks ago. Mom, honey, I just don't think you know what you're saying. Your father had to pull strings at Georgetown. You've got an internship lined up already. You're... Mom! Logan interrupts louder this time. I'm telling you, I don't want to go. Cynthia lets out a high-pitched, disgruntled noise that makes his ear hurt, and he holds the phone away for a moment, rubbing said ear soothingly. She goes on. It isn't about want, Logan. It's about what's right for you. Don't you want a good job? So you can afford a house and a car and get married and have... Mom! He shouts, bringing his phone to his ear once more and gritting his teeth. I have to start making these decisions. I can't. I can't do more school when it's not even something I'm sure of. What about the debt if I have to drop out or... Drop out? She screeches. You will do no such thing. Loganberry Bush, you are doing this and I don't want to hear another word otherwise. A moment of silence follows. Because how in the fuck is he supposed to respond to that? But Cynthia holds her ground. And that guilty gut of his twists. They did already pay the deposit. His dad did have to pull strings. He sighs. Yeah, all right. It's said without tone or inflection, probably because this whole conversation has him going numb and checking out. Cynthia's voice changes, going friendly and chipper, and not at all like she was ripping his throat out and shoving it so far down he could feel it in his testicles. How were the flowers for May Grippentrog's wedding? The lilacs were a nice addition. Logan sighs and does his best to regale her with different bouquet arrangements, how their partnerships are going with a few local vendors who need flower boxes outside their businesses. It's all very civil and very fake, and when he gets off the phone, he very robotically repeats back that he loves her too. Nous sommes. And then he has to lay down. Every conversation with his mother is so mentally and emotionally exhausting. He's barely able to make it over to Louise's before he collapses on the couch. Face first. Rough day, she calls from the bedroom. He mumbles into the couch cushion, gray and lumpy, and so soft he doesn't even care that his face is buried in a place almost exclusively reserved for butts. Customers? Louise asks, walking back into the room in her standard shorts and ratty crop top that she tries to pass off for pajamas. He sits up, hands scrubbing down his face. My mom. Oh God. Yeah. She still... She asks in as gentle a way as Louise can manage, which is to say, not very gentle. He laughs. A she-hag devil spawn? Oh, yeah. She sucks on her teeth and plops down next to him. Her warm thigh presses into his. Want me to get takeout? Logan turns to her, grinning wide before nodding fiercely. Her hair is still wet from her shower, but he can already see the soft curls forming, cheeks bright with color from the steam. She looks fresh and whole in a way that makes him want to nuzzle into the skin of her neck and breathe her in. And so, he does. She is sweet, tang and acrid smoke. Something warm and rich and sharp. It reminds him of lazy Sundays down at the wharf when he was young and dumb and just wanted one more chance to win the Wheelie Mammoth. She bats his hands away, but she's smiling, already dialing the number for their favorite takeout. He kisses the side of her neck and she pinches his side, but tilts her chin up to afford him more access. Hi, I'd like to place an order for... Oh, hey, Jin. Yeah, can we get the usual, please? Louise asks as Logan sucks at her neck and runs his hands slowly up and down her sides. Louise weaves her fingers into his hair and scrunches her nose, but she is shit at pretending she isn't into this. He nips at her ear and she adds, Maybe add an order of the green tea ice cream? Awesome. Thanks. How long do you think? 30 minutes? She eyes Logan, quirking a brow. That's definitely enough time to have some fun. He waggles his eyebrows suggestively, and the moment she hangs up, he's sliding his hands under her thighs and hauling her up into his arms. Jesus, Bush, Louise teases. Can't even keep it in your pants to order sustenance for afterward? Nope. Sure can't. Want you? She laughs when he throws her to the bed, and he is all pent up. He's still a bit pissed from talking to his mom, had an incredibly long day at the shop, and Louise just looks good. She tastes good. She is good, or at least good for him. When he kneels on the bed and crawls to her, she reaches out, dragging him down to her by the waistband of his pants, and kisses him hard on the mouth. With teeth and tongue, it has him gasping into her as he pins one of her hands to the bed. Most of the time they're rushed, fueled by heat and passion and a certain amount of insatiability. But even though they have a limited amount of time with their impending food delivery, he takes his time with her, hands trailing and mouth soft. He eases her out of her clothes and lingers at his most loved places, the dip of her hip, the dimple along her right thigh, the freckle under her left breast, the little spot that makes her keen along her clavicle. It's painstaking and thorough, and when he pushes into the hilt, she is already wet and shaking. "Fuck me," she says. Logan knows she means it to sound demanding, but the whine in her voice gives her away. He rocks into her, gripping the swell of her hips to try and ground himself, to not follow over the edge immediately. But she feels so good, tight and hot and wet and perfect. Logan thumbs at her nipple, and she hisses, thrusting up into him and tightening her ankles around his back, pulling him that much closer, that much deeper, and he knows he won't last long. He sucks gentle kisses along the pulse point at her neck and reaches between them. His thumb finds her clit and he circles it, that swollen little bud, until she pulls him by the neck and her lips crash into his, greedy and devouring. Those little gasps into his mouth are bringing him right to the edge. He sucks her earlobe into his mouth and bites as his hips roll into hers. The sound of flesh on flesh fills the room, and he hears the low rumbling growls coming from him, something feral and fierce and animalistic. Louise meets him beat for beat and cries out. She's shaking, tense and tight until she shatters. God, he can feel her inner walls fluttering, like a thrumming pulse between them that sucks him deeper still. And when he bottoms out again, he loses it, falling over the edge and spilling into her, and it is a fucking divine experience. His pulse thunders in his ears, and his hands shake around her waist. Maybe if he holds on tight, he'll come back to earth. But does he even want to? Logan finally begins to soften and falls into bed at her side, pulling her into him so that she's draped over his chest, and their breaths mingle in the space between them. They're both blissed out and undone. They lay there for a long moment, silent and warm and satiated, until Logan presses a kiss to her temple and traces a hand along the curves of her body, charting out the dips and swells like a well-loved map. With her head pressed over his heart and the smell of them on her sheets, he knows with sudden terrifying clarity that he loves her. He supposes he's known for a while now, maybe from the moment she came back into his life, maybe from her taunting words or her oblique challenges. It's in the way she pushes him and pulls him along, the way she fights and fucks. As he brushes a curl out of her face, she hums, contented, but then she pushes up into a sitting position and swings her legs over the bed, rooting around to find her discarded clothes. She looks back at him, looking sexy and annoyed and fond all at once. "Somebody has to be responsible and get the food," Louise quips, and he grins like an idiot, heart stuttering erratically in his chest, and the twinge somewhere behind his ribs thrums painfully, clear and bright and so fucking scary. He loves her, and he's going to burn everything down if it means he's got a shot at keeping her. The day it all went to shit, Logan heaps another bushel of azaleas into the workroom. Christ, it's going to take him hours to pull them apart, clip them into workable cuttings, and arrange them with the eucalyptus in baby's breath. He sighs. The computer dings with a notification from the checkout counter up front, and he goes to click it open. It's an email on his personal account. To Logan Berry, bush@lbw2145@gmail.com. Subject, declined admission. Dear Mr. Bush, thank you for your notification that you will declining your admission into Georgetown's law program. Please understand that your slot for the program will be reallocated by the end of the week to our next candidate on the waitlist. Should you wish to attend Georgetown in the fall semester, you will... He smiles, a huge weight lifting off his shoulder. He feels like he can breathe for the first time in weeks, months, maybe. The bell of the front door dings and he glances up. Ah, young Mr. Bush. Excellent. I was hoping to have a word, Mr. Fishoder says. His eye patch gleams bright white in the sunbeams bleeding in from the front window. The older man bounces on the balls of his feet, all excitement and promise. Is this about my proposition? Logan asks. Mr. Fishoder's mouth quirks up in amusement. More like application, but call it what you want, I suppose. Yes, dear boy, that's why I'm here. So, what's the verdict? You made some excellent points. Clearly you've got an eye for design and a head for business acumen. Your mother's shop has done well in your care, and I reviewed your fraternity event portfolio. Some impressive fundraisers in there, young man. You raised $50,000 in a weekend for children's literacy? Logan gulps. It isn't common knowledge. The philanthropic events he'd coordinated for Alpha Tau Omega. It had started when he was an underclassman. He's always had a way with rich, predominantly white people. Maybe it was the years under his parents' thumb. But he knows how to play the game. A conciliatory laugh, a friendly grasp of an arm, a well-placed wink. By the time he was a junior, he was the fundraising chair. His final year with Alpha Tau Omega, he was elected frat president. He'd stumbled through at first, but event planning, organizing, and raising major dollars was now a well-honed skill. So when he approached Calvin about assisting Felix with the gallery and actually turning a profit, well, things seem to be falling into place now. Yay, he says, and then with more conviction, I did, and I can do the same for the gallery. Mr. Fishoder gives Logan a discerning eye, and his brows narrow skeptically, but a moment later he's straightening up and nodding his head. All right, he says, let's give it a go. Felix will be delighted. Well, perhaps I'll convince him it was his idea first. Yes, that's probably best. Logan beams. Thank you, Mr. Fishoder. You won't be disappointed. Mr. Fishoder glances at the open computer screen behind him, and his brow furrows. Georgetown Law? Logan bristles. It wasn't my idea. The implication is thick in the air. Mr. Fish knows his parents well enough. He knows exactly what Logan means. And for the first time, Calvin balks. Logan, you're quite sure about this? Your mother, Mr. Fish says, and Logan can't believe his mother has gotten to someone else. Her reach shouldn't cease to amaze him at this point, but how she has cowed the wealthiest man in town is beyond him. Instead, Logan cuts him off. I'm sure. It's the right thing. The right move. Mr. Fish hums, and it's wishy-washy. Logan can practically feel him backpedaling when Calvin says, Law school is quite the feather in your cap. But if you're sure, I am. He is firm, direct. He has to be. It's the only way to handle rich people. Meet them with a cold confidence to rival their own. Mr. Fish sighs. You know this is going to crush her. But no amount of guilt-tripping or coercion can bend him at this point. For once in his miserable life, he's ready to take a stand. To say no. To accept being cut off and possibly sever what he is now recognizing as a pretty toxic relationship with his parents. Reclaiming his life is worth it. She is worth it. With that thought fueling him, he steels himself. Cynthia will move past this. And if she doesn't, she can fuck off and out of his life. She'll get over it. Calvin studies his face carefully for a moment before nodding again and offering a hand. So be it. You've got a deal. I'll let Felix know on Monday. With that, Mr. Fishoder leaves, and Logan finally takes a deep breath. He smiles. After he handles those damn azaleas, he's going to make Louise the nicest meal he can. He's going to tell her he's not going to law school, that he wants to stay, that he wants to fuck her and make her food and watch samurai movies and maybe take care of her, and she can take care of him. The feeling expands in his chest as he preps dinner, until he is bursting with it, his chest like a balloon, swollen with feelings that should scare him, feelings that should worry him. But he is blinded by relief and contentment. And then quite suddenly, when Louise arrives, everything goes sideways. Until she says, "That's all it ever was to me. Convenient fucking. Good sex. Nothing more. That good feeling, the one that has sustained him so far, bursts, and he is left deflated and empty. He can't quite get a grip on what is happening, because this is quite literally a waking nightmare. How could he not have braced for this? Prepared himself? Protected himself? But he's a fucking fool. Too arrogant to see what was right in front of him. She's too good for him. Always has been. Always will be. So after he offers up that small confession, too late for that, he leaves and doesn't look back. With every step away from her, he hardens his heart, determined to put this whole mess behind him. Is this what happens when you try? When you go out on a limb? Is this the lesson he needed to learn to know his place? And by the time he gets back to his parents' house, he is numb, carefully blank, using every bit of his ability to suppress and repress, to stop. Don't want, don't feel, don't think for yourself. Just stop. Stop. Logan unlocks his phone, clicks into his emails and finishes reading. You, too. Logan Barry Bush at lbbush2145@gmail.com. Subject: Declined admission. Dear Mr. Bush, thank you for your notification that you will declining your admission into Georgetown's law program. Please understand that your slot for the program will be reallocated by end of the day to our next candidate on the wait list. Should you wish to attend Georgetown in the fall semester, you will need to rescind your declination in the next 48 hours with your admissions officer, whose contact can be found from Georgetown's law program homepage. Sincerely, Cam Rockford, Office of Admissions, Georgetown University. He finds his admissions officer with a few quick clicks, opens a fresh email, and types out a message. Hello, Miss Anderson. I apologize for my earlier email declining admittance to Georgetown. It looks as though my plans have changed. I would still be honored to be part of Georgetown's illustrious law program. I believe I am still within the time frame to retract my denial. Please confirm at your earliest convenience. Thank you for your understanding and flexibility. Kind regards, Logan Barry Bush. His finger hovers over the little paper airplane icon. He hesitates, but then he remembers her yelling, "You're leaving!" Cold fury alight in her eyes. His hand tightens around his phone, and he smashes the send button. There. It's done. He's going to Georgetown, and Louise Belcher will be in his rearview mirror. Good riddance. But he bites at the inside of his mouth until he draws blood, until he tastes the sharp tang of iron, metallic and bitter. He blinks furiously before he mutters to the empty room, "So long, 4 years?" Chapter 9. Hit the ground running. 10 miserable days later. Louise is transfixed by a very small stain on the counter. She scrubs it, hard, until her hand aches and the muscle in her lower back twitches with the strain. A voice from the back calls, "Order up for table 4," but she doesn't hear. Or maybe the words just don't mean anything anymore. She glares harder at the stain. Maybe if she uses some sort of bleach product. Or there was a frayed bundle of steel wool somewhere. She could just shave off a section of the counter, and then it would be clean. Spotless. Order up! Louise crouches, rummaging under the counter and stretching out to reach a well-worn cardboard box in the back. She knows those steel wool pads are back here somewhere. Her fingers brush the box. If she could just stretch a bit further. "Louise!" Bob practically shouts. Louise's spine snaps to straighten up, but fucking shit. She's still scrunched under the counter, and the act of standing has her bashing her head along the underside of the cabinet. "Fuck!" she hisses, rubbing what will most likely develop into a goose egg tomorrow. Her mother comes out from the kitchen, grabbing the plate from the window and tuts at her. "You're lucky I got done grinding the meat early, Miss Missy. Where's your head today?" Louise grumbles, but Tina has chosen that moment to walk in. Great. Just great. Tina's eyes widen, clearly having heard their mother's question. "You don't know?" Linda's hands go to her hips, looking between her daughters. "Know what?" Tina's eyes drill into the side of her head, but Louise ignores them both and takes the plate her mother was going to serve out of her hands to finally deliver it. "Louise and Logan broke up last week," Tina whispers. But truthfully, it's more like a stage whisper, loud and scratchy. The sound grates on Louise. Louise rolls her eyes. "We didn't break up because we were never together." She plops the plate down in front of a very nervous-looking customer, whose eyes flick to her before flitting away again. Louise glares at him. "You want to judge me too, Alan? Go ahead and fucking try." "I dare you." Alan hastily stuffs half of the burger into his mouth, trying to inhale his food and get the hell out of Dodge. Louise snarls, but when she heads back to the counter, Tina has disappeared into the back, and Linda is looking at her with such pity, it lights an intense molten fire of rage in her. "Don't look at me like that!" Her voice rises in pitch and volume. She's just on the verge of shouting, her hands clenched into tight fists at her sides. "Louise!" Linda starts, voice warm and empathetic. But the second she moves to touch her arm, Louise jerks away. "Nino? Oh my God. For once in your life, keep your nose out of it. Get your own life to worry about instead of always meddling in mine. It's pathetic." As soon as the words leave her mouth, she feels the telltale curl of shame settling heavy in her belly. Twisting, low and uncomfortable. But Louise is too goddamn proud. Always has been. She juts out her chin. Stay strong. Mom has to learn she can't always just. But then Louise sees the hurt look on her mom's face. The quiver of her chin. The taut pull of her mouth. Fuck. Mom! But Linda sniffles. Her cheek twitches. Her eyes well up. Oh, fucking Lord. No, no, no. What? Linda dissolves into a puddle of tears, rushing to the back, wailing loudly. Louise sighs and swipes her hands down her face. Alan throws some money on the table and makes a beeline for the door. She can't even muster a glare at his retreating back. The bell echoes in the empty space. She is alone at the front of the restaurant. Once again, she's driven everyone away by being an unforgivable asshole. She takes a breath. And another. But the tight pull in her chest doesn't ease. It hurts. She hurts. She wads up a napkin and throws it across the restaurant toward the kitchen. The door to the back swings open, and her father steps out, stooping low to pick up the crumbled napkin. Louise can't even meet his eyes. "Did Mom and Tina send you?" She looks up finally to see him gnawing at his lip. She can tell he's debating on the merits of lying, but he sighs, running a hand through his thinning salt and pepper hair. "They're worried about you, Louise," he says finally. "I'm fine. Everything's fine. They're just being dramatic because they don't understand." Bob leans on the counter. "Understand what?" She glares. She knows what he's doing. But fuck it all. She doesn't have the willpower to fly into a rage. The fire that was in her before, spitting and burning, has flickered and died, leaving her feeling like a pile of glowing embers, still hot with fury, but unable to spark. A weak, dull glow. Louise groans and says, "They're both such romantics. They can't imagine a world where I'm not upset by something ending. We weren't even a thing." Bob stares at her for a long, hard moment, expression carefully blank. "So, you're not upset?" She glares, mouth going thin and tight. Bob sighs. "Louise, you've always been tough, scrappy, since you were little. You packed your first to-go bag when you were 6. You've never wanted to need anyone else. And I always respected that about you. I never had to worry about you because of that." Louise has always had a special relationship with her dad. They understood one another. Maybe they're both a little rigid, but he gets her, at least more than the rest of her family. So she knows what's coming before he even says it. But there it is. Someone had once told her, whenever you hear the word "but" in reference to your actions or relationships, know that everything after it will be shit. Even that placid little idiom can't armor enough, though. "But," Bob continues, "now I'm realizing that maybe I should have worried. Maybe by not pushing you to connect, I helped you shut yourself off. Maybe all your independence has kept you from real, meaningful relationships, where you both give and take." He sighs, coming around the counter to sit on a bar stool before her. And he looks so tired. There are bags under his eyes, and dark circles that seem to be permanently tinged purple. I know I'm not the best at taking care of myself, or leaning on others. I can be controlling. Louise clears her throat. Every Thanksgiving of my childhood. He smiles at that, fond and reminiscent, and it tugs at something in her chest. And sometimes I'm dismissive and take myself too seriously. But your mom? She keeps me from being too intense, too lost in work. She helps me lighten up, enjoy life, come out from behind the grill and remember to breathe. Bob is staring at the counter, but she can hear the little rumble of emotion at the back of his throat. She's always known her parents were complimentary of each other. Sometimes when she was younger, she wondered how they worked at all, because they seemed so different. But the older she got, the more she understood. It isn't about likeness or similarities. It's about fitting together like puzzle pieces, helping round each other out and bringing out the best of the other. Louise groans, and she's horrified to feel a thick lump in her throat. She struggles to get the words out. Dad, I think I really fucked up. Like colossally. A fuck-up so big I don't know if it can be undone. She can't look at him. She's worried she'll find disappointment, or worse, pity. But Bob hums his understanding and chuffs her on the shoulder, quick and firm, warm. Never gonna know if you don't try to fix it, P. She rolls her eyes at the long-standing term of endearment that had started as a joke, but somehow came to stick. Bob chuckles, and finally she looks at him. His wrinkles crease with the soft lines of his laughter, and he looks somehow younger, even with the pronounced crinkles. He wipes at the counter, even though there isn't a smudge on it, and continues. It sucks to swallow your pride and serve yourself on a platter when you know you might get cut down to size. But when it's your ego versus the person you love, it's a necessity. Love? Love? Nobody said anything about love. It's preposterous, unthinkable. But even as she spirals in her own head, there is a fluttering behind her ribs and a swoop in her stomach that hurts in a weirdly cathartic way. Well, God fucking damn it. Louise's eyes widen, horrified. Is it that obvious? Her voice is too high, too thin, and she expects him to laugh. But instead, Bob reaches out and grips her arm. Maybe not to everyone, but to us. Glaringly so. Louise growls before she yelps, but I didn't even know. Bob shrugs like, that's how it goes. Her mouth tightens, but she pushes to her feet. Oh God, oh God. Is she really doing this? Her feet are already carrying her to the door when she turns back, hand on the doorknob. Tell Mom I'm sorry. I'll make it up to her. Bob shakes his head and flicks his hand to shoo her away. Go on. I'll smooth things over with your mom. I'll explain that you were struck dumb with love. Louise lets out a high-pitched huff. Oh my God. Dad! Better get going. She glares so hard, grinding her teeth. But she pulls the door open, determination fueling her steps. When Louise dismounts her bike in front of the flower shop, she can't even recall the ride over. Just fleeting whispers of wind on her face and the thrum of the engine under her as she cut across street after street. The bell rings with a loud echo when she pushes the door open, and she doesn't waste time. She marches to the back, steeling herself for the moment. The confrontation. Her heartbeat thuds in her ears. Logan, she calls. I know you're pissed, but the words die in her throat, though, as she crosses the threshold of the back room. Because it's not Logan standing there at the pristine work table. It's Cynthia. Cynthia, with her pinched face like she's got a rod shoved up her backside. Her eyes are cold when they flit to Louise. Ah, Cynthia says, clipped and rigid. The youngest Belcher. She eyes the tattoos that curve up Louise's forearms with disdain. How can I help you? Louise offers no preamble. Where's Logan? Cynthia's mouth tightens, but her lips turn up in a weird facsimile of a smile. He's home, packing. Louise's heart sinks into her stomach, but Cynthia prattles on, glowing with pride. He's accepted to Georgetown for their law program, and he's leaving this weekend. Louise finishes for her, because she realizes with horror that he is supposed to leave. This weekend. Fuck. She takes a step toward the door. Maybe she can catch him. Maybe she can... Oh my God. Are you the one that besmirched his body with that monstrosity? Louise looks back, and Cynthia's face has morphed from forced politeness to downright snarling rage. She's staring at Louise's tattoos in disgust. Well, looks like she's seen Logan's tattoo and has managed to put 2 and 2 together. Yes, Cynthia, that makes 4. Louise sets her jaw, turning back to Logan's mother and squaring off her stance. She wants a fight? Good. She's got one. Doesn't it stink? Louise asks, voice dripping in disdain. Cynthia crinkles her nose. What? It smells like roses in here. You uncultured. Having your nose up Logan's ass every day of his life has got to get pretty stinky. Cynthia's mouth drops open. Horror is etched on her face. That's disgusting. How dare you comment on... He's a grown man, Cynthia, and he deserves to make his own choices, Louise says, voice rising. Cynthia appears to be in shock, mouth hanging open, but she's temporarily robbed of words. Clearly, she's not used to being challenged, so Louise digs in. Not only are you doing him a huge disservice as a parent by coddling him, but he's also miserable. The prospect of law school is killing him. Louise's voice is higher, more unhinged than it should be. Too brash, too emotional. She tries to choke down the lump in her throat as she continues on. Just because he doesn't want to live the life you've chosen for him doesn't mean he's any less. He's smart, he's driven, he's resourceful, and definitely a pain in my ass with how stubborn he is. But he's good, and he deserves your love and your respect. Even if you don't agree with what he chooses to make of his life, it's still his choice. Even if you hate him for being poor or unsuccessful by your standards, love him for being your kid. Louise is out of breath, wrung dry. Cynthia just stares at her, apparently stunned speechless for once. Louise doesn't wait for her to catch up or to respond. Instead, she marches back out and swings her leg over her bike. She hardly opens the choke before she slams the engine on and throws the throttle. He's at the house. He's at the house. She barely remembers to kick out the kickstand when she pulls up to the front of Tom and Cynthia's pristine mini manor. God, it's so fucking elegant it makes her fists clench. She storms up the brick steps and bangs on the white door with the lovely floral wreath, probably one Logan made as a welcome home gift. Her gut wrenches at the thought and she pounds harder. Logan, Logan, open up! She hears footsteps and her heart races. Is she breathing? Has she forgotten how? She sucks in a quick, too shallow breath and splutters into a cough. The door flies open, but her heart sinks as she registers the mousy brown hair, the round glasses. Oh, hi. Is everything okay? Tom asks. She realizes then how insane she must look. Hair a frizzy mess from flying down the highway, cheeks red, eyes bloodshot, glassy. Is Logan here? Tom's mouth turns down. No, sorry. He went to that tattoo parlor. Ink about it? It's across from my wife's shop. Apparently he had an errand to run there The parlor? Of course. Logan was due for his final appointment of shading and color alterations. She'd totally forgotten in the madness of feelings and realizations. But she thought his appointment wasn't for another hour. Whatever. It doesn't matter. She just has to get there. Now. Yay! Okay. Thanks. Logan's dad? She calls without a backward glance, leaving Tom to stare dumbfounded in the place she'd occupied only moments before. But when she makes it to ink about it, there is no Logan. Marshmallow! She practically shouts in a rush. Have you seen? Marshmallow holds something out to her. An envelope. It's thick and hefty. Louise snatches it quickly, pulling it open. It's a wad of cash. A stack of bills that crinkle as she counts them. $250. Her mouth goes dry. When she looks up at Marshmallow, though her mentor's eyes are soulful and sad, Louise tries to put together her thoughts. She needs to form words. A sentence even. Logan? It's all she manages to articulate, and Marshmallow's hand comes down heavy on her shoulder. She's shaking her head. Large dark eyes fixed on the ground. Louise can already feel her heart splintering before Marshmallow even speaks. He's not coming, baby. Had his car packed and heading out of town. Told me to give you this to make up for the appointment slot he took up, and a tip for all your work. But... Louise starts, then stops. Words getting stuck around that pesky lump in her throat again. It isn't finished. It's lame, but it's all she's got. Marshmallow grabs her around the shoulders, pulling her in for a fierce squeeze. I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry. I know he was more than a boy toy to you. Louise's lip starts to tremble. She pulls away from Marshmallow, wrenching free and turning back to the door. Run! 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 But every harbor or safe haven feels wrong. She feels too raw for anywhere other than her apartment. She needs to drown her sorrows in ice cream and whiskey, and about 50 reruns of Hawk Chick movies. So she packs it in, straddles her bike, and heads for home. She's watched 3 movies, eaten 2 pints of ice cream, and gone through 1 box of tissues. Fuck off. Even punk-ass rebels cry, not that she was crying. Absolutely not. When there is a knock at her door. Louise glares at it. "Go away," she shouts, throwing her new box of tissues for good measure. To no avail. The knocking continues. Harder this time. Her mouth pinches into a tight line. Probably Jean. Or Tina. Come to check on her. She growls, wrapping the blanket around her, up over her head as well. She probably has red cheeks and tracks of tears down her face, bloodshot eyes and wild, untamable curls. But what does it matter? She has no dignity left, she's sure. God, when had she become such a mopey, besotted twit? Like Tina in her prepubescent years. It was embarrassing. And moreover, it hurt. God, it hurt. It hurt like she didn't know hurt could feel. The pounding knock resumes and she stiffens. Louise sniffs and pulls the blanket tighter. But she straightens her spine and marches to the door. Best get this over with. She'd yell at her siblings, then bury herself in blankets and ice cream until she goes numb. Then maybe she can pick up the pieces. Begin to forget him. Forget that feeling of want that leaves a dull ache in her chest cavity. She clears her throat and twists her face into the meanest snarl she can manage, putting her armor into place piece by piece as she wrenches open the door, already yelling, "I told you to go up, boo!" But the breath is stolen from her lungs. Louise's mouth hangs open, halfway through a vicious yell. "Hey, Shortstack." Logan. Here. On her doorstep. For once, words fail her though, and she can only stand there gawping. He scratches the back of his neck, eyes roving over her face. "My mom told me you stopped by the shop. Well, more like shrieked at me about that wretched girl who poked you full of holes and ink." He grins. It's that lopsided grin that pulls at the right corner of his mouth. The twinge in her heart thrums painfully. "You know she has surveillance monitors in the shop?" he asks. He's trying to say it dismissively, but she can hear the tremor just at the edges. He's emotional. She looks him in the eyes for the first time. The blue is piercing, and they are wide and unblinking as he takes her in. After she was done yelling about how you scolded her, I couldn't help but wonder what on earth you'd done to get her so riled up. I haven't seen her that frazzled since she caught me smoking weed in my room in high school. Louise just stares. The blanket she has been clutching desperately falls to the ground. He steps across the threshold and she doesn't stop him. She's caught in some sort of thrall, entirely unable to move or speak. "I heard what you said, Four Ears." A beat of silence before he asks, "Did you mean it?" She tries to talk, to say all the words that she wanted to say when she spent all day hunting him down, but the lump in her throat is too thick, and her eyes hurt from crying. Louise feels like a pot that's been boiled over again and again, and now there's hardly anything left in the pan. She nods, trying desperately to clear her throat, to say something. Anything. That one motion is all it takes, though. His hand wraps around her bicep and he pulls her into him. Louise clutches him, sinks into him, breathes him. Like a woman parched, she drinks him in. Her hand fists into his shirt. Another stupid shirt. It says, "Eat pussy while it's still legal." She rolls her eyes and slaps his chest. "I bet your mother loves this shirt." He shrugs and nuzzles his face into the crook of her neck. "Sex and politics, her favorite topics of discussion with me." A snort escapes her, and she clings to him tighter, pulling his face toward hers. God, you must drive her crazy. And her lips are on his, devouring and claiming. His mouth is soft and sweet, or maybe that's the taste of ice cream lingering on her tongue. Logan pulls away and rests his forehead on hers. It really drove her crazy when I told her I wasn't going to Georgetown. Her heart leaps straight into her throat. "You... what?" He just pulls her close again. Unbearably tall and warm. He smiles into her neck, his breath tickling the hairs at the nape of her neck as he says, "Looks like you're stuck with me. 4 ears." She beams, burying her face into his chest to hide the wide, irrepressible grin. Ugh, did I lose some sort of bet? He pinches her side, and she jabs him for good measure. but his hand darts out to catch her wrist and pull her in again. Looks like it, Smelcher. Will you keep working at your mom's shop? Please say yes, and let me watch you drive your mother to the brink of insanity with those stupid shirts. I'm sure I don't know what you're talking about, Logan quips. Louise glares at him, but he carries on. I got a job with the fish odors. I'll be managing the finances and fundraising for the gallery. Her eyes widen. The gallery? That's right. He looks so fucking smug, she glares and pulls him down by his shirt. You're gonna talk to Felix about me having a space. It isn't a question. My. Someone's demanding. I don't know if I can pull strings for just, how did you put it? Someone I'm conveniently fucking. Louise's stomach turns, shame pooling just below her navel. But when she tries to pull back to search Logan's face, he holds tight, that smug smile still in place. But maybe I can make a concession for my girlfriend. She balks. What? But he's still looking far too smug, like a cat who's got the canary. And that just will not do. You just have to label it, don't you? Louise snarks, rolling her eyes. Logan nods happily. God, what a simp. But fuck it all. She melts. The tiniest bit. Like an Antarctic glacier on a warm spring day. With his boyish smile and his earnest expression, it's annoyingly difficult not to. But she is still a goddamn glacier. Stupid boy be damned. She sighs dramatically. Fine, she concedes. But you better make that shirt a reality, right now. He quirks a brow. Oh, yay? Yeah. Make me. Louise grins, feral and wide, tugging him more fully into her apartment and slamming the door behind them. Chapter 10. How You Landed Gigolo Chef. She tugged him by the hand. His gremlin girl. God, she'd flay him alive if she knew he thought of her as his. I can practically feel you thinking, Bush. Do us both a favor and quit it, Louise say, flinging open the door to her bedroom. It's a riot of greens in every shade imaginable, and he can't help the little twist of his lips. She's crammed a small TV and a chest of drawers in the corner, and there are clothes littered all over the floor. Her bed is an absolute nest of pillows and blankets. Without further fanfare, she pushes him roughly back onto the bed, and he splays there for a moment. Legs wide, arms thrown back to catch himself, sucking in a lungful of air as he watches her shuck her top, her bralette, and her little shorts. God, she wasn't wearing any underwear, and if he wasn't hard before, he's like a rock now. He shifts on his feet, trying to alleviate how his dick is pressing up against his zipper. Logan trips as he tries to push his pants down, too busy staring at Louise's tits. Focus, Bush. I'm gonna need you to deliver on those promises. Logan pulls off his clothes and kneels on the bed. You're the one who distracted me. No underwear? Really? She shrugs. But dear Lord, that predatory grin makes his cock throb again. Underwear is stupid, she says by way of explanation. Logan manages to nod, hands already toying with her ankles, sliding along the smooth flesh there. Yup, yes, very stupid. Louise laughs but abruptly stops when he traces her seam with 2 fingers. God, she's already so wet, practically dripping. He teases along her slit and she digs her hands into the sheets. But God, he needs to revel in her. He kisses the juncture of her hip, the swell of her thigh, the soft slope of her stomach. Along the column of her ribs his hands wander until he's cupping her breast and taking one peaked nipple into his mouth. Louise gasps, and her hips come off the bed, searching for friction. Logan! But he's already laving at her breast with the flat of his tongue, then kissing up the column of her neck. She grips him by the sides of his face, turning him so he has to stop and look at her. Hey, I have an idea. His head is still foggy with lust, and the thought of tasting her everywhere he can manage. He lets out a low huff, but she swats his hands away. Lie back. His brow furrows. But I thought, surely a dangerous endeavor. Hey, I was just about to get you off 4 ears. And I'm telling you, I have a better idea. Trust me, Bush. She's looking at him with that little dimple tucked into the corner of her mouth. He used to think it was her plotting expression, but now he knows it for what it is. A moment of veiled vulnerability. A question that needs answering. He presses one final kiss to the shell of her ear and lays back on the bed. Louise smiles. Wicked and warm. It makes his stomach twist when she straddles his hips, her back to him. His brow knits in confusion. What are you? But she scoots back further until she's straddling his face, and she sinks down on her elbows. He almost face plants into her pussy when she takes his dick in hand. Fuck. He wheezes out before finally understanding the assignment. He grips her thighs and draws her center to his mouth and laps at her in earnest. God, she tastes tangy like citrus, yet smooth and earthy. It is so perfectly her, and he could make a meal of her. But when she swallows down his length, his hands tighten, and he's worried for a moment he'll leave little fingerprint bruises along the swell of her legs. It feels so good. Earth-shatteringly good. Her mouth is hot, small and warm, and dear Lord, she is doing truly wicked things with her tongue. Things that make any fantasies he's had seem pale in comparison. Logan throws himself back into focusing on her, flicking his tongue along the butt of her clit, then following it with flat, broad strokes. He can feel her legs begin to shake, and he wraps his lips around the little bud and suckles softly, gently, teasing. Oh God, Louise groans, popping off his cocky, slick spit still coating him. Okay, enough teasing. We need to fuck. Now! By all means, princess, he quips easily. In truth, he's quite relieved. There's no way he would have lasted another 10 seconds under that relentless mouth. She's already dismounted his face and presses one palm to his chest, pinning him down. Shut up! She swings one leg over again, now facing him. And God, is he grateful for it. Logan can see the bright pink patches on her cheeks, her wild dark hair framing her face, and the way her blush has spread all the way up her chest to the top of those perky tits. Before Louise can make any further moves, he grips the back of her neck, drawing her in so close their breaths mingle. His heart catches in his throat and he swallows hard before grinding out, I love you. Then Logan kisses her, desperate and deep. The feeling in his chest blooms and expands between them, and he almost can't worry or wonder if she feels the same. He's bursting with it, has been bursting with it for weeks, and the relief at giving voice to thoughts that had been so secret, so carefully guarded. He feels as if a balloon that's been blown too tight finally has an open valve. He nips at her lip when she pulls back, and she allows her hand to drift over his cheek. He can't for the life of him read her expression, but before he can give it further thought, Louise takes him in hand, rises up, and notches his cock at her entrance. In one movement she sinks onto him, all the way to the hilt. His hands fly back to her waist as they both let out a hissing breath. It takes her a moment. He watches her chest rise and fall, and finally her eyes meet his, dark and deep, and she begins to rock. A slow grind that has him gritting his teeth and pressing his fingers into the swell of her thighs. Fuck, he grunts. You feel so good. There is no wicked grin anymore. No playful teasing lilt to her mouth. She is wide-eyed and open-mouthed, and she looks gone. Her breath hitches and she gasps. Oh God! Shrill and wrecked. Logan helps her, easing her on and off him, thrusting up into her with every slide of her body on his. They've got a rhythm now, slick skin slapping together, and he can feel himself starting to crest. Oh, Louise, he bites out. Are you close? She can only nod, head lolling like a bobblehead with every thrust. But when he picks up steam, driving up into her at a punishing pace, her fierceness comes out again, never one to back down. Her nails dig into his chest, and she is fucking transcendent, grinding on him within an inch of his life. Her tits bounce with the movement, and he reaches up to cup one, teasing one nipple with the pad of his thumb until she cries out, Logan, I'm coming. I'm gonna come. Her whole body racks and shudders as she bears down on him, and my God, the way she falls apart around him, screaming his name. He's a goner, absolutely undone as he comes, and comes, and comes. His breathing is rough and ragged, and he has to remind himself to unclench from where he's holding her thighs, like they're his lifeline. But she grips his jaw and hinges on top of him, letting out shuddering breaths along his neck until she peppers little kisses along his throat. The blood thrums hot in his veins. When she slides off to lay beside him, he immediately tugs her into his side, so she's half sprawled across his chest. Louise rolls her eyes, but she nuzzles her head just a bit into the dip of his shoulder, and he grins. So insufferably smug, he knows he's facing a slap if she sees it. Logan draws little patterns along her shoulder with the pads of his fingers, and they fall into a still, companionable silence. Content. After a few moments, he wonders if she's drifted off to sleep, so he's startled when she says, in a voice hardly above a whisper, "I do too, you know." He tries to tilt his head at a better angle so he can see her face, but she carefully tucks her chin into his side. "Do what?" he asks. It's the way she fidgets with a lock of her hair, the way she scrunches her nose. She's nervous and he is taken aback. He doesn't think he's ever seen Louise nervous. Always strong, opinionated, fierce. But nervous? He's smart enough to know he's got to wait for her to broach it, though. Doesn't want to scare her off with guesses. And finally, after what feels like eternity, but is truthfully only a few moments, she swallows hard, and he can feel her clench her jaw. "Love you?" It's so quiet. Mumbled into his chest. And God, he tightens his hold just a bit. He's relieved she's not looking at him, so she can't see the absolutely wrecked smile spreading over his face. But he can't let her off that easy. "You love me. You think I'm sexy. You want to marry me?" He sing-songs. She scrambles off him to deliver a menacing glare and a swat to his chest. Oh my God, Logan. Really? Miss Congeniality quotes? You're better than that. Hey, Sandy B is a legend and I'll hear nothing against her. God, your mother warped you with your bougie coffee and your terrible taste in movies. He snorts and drags her back into his side. I have it on good authority you love Nancy Meyers' flicks. Louise tangles her legs with his and pinches his arm. Hey, Father of the Bride and Parent Trap are just my kind of chaos. And the romance plot lines just cease to exist when you watch them? She jabs him again, and he snatches her hand and presses it to his lips. Louise remains unappeased as she grumbles. You're the worst. You're not wrong, he agrees. But you still love me. God, he loves saying it. He loves how her cheeks flush when he says the words. So, you're really staying? Louise asks. Logan smiles, soft and sure. Looks like it, short stack. You can't get rid of me. Louise nods. So, where will you stay? Your parents? He cringes. Doesn't have a choice on that. He's got nothing lined up. Just until I can find my own place. She falls quiet for a moment, and Logan starts to panic. Does she not want this? Did he misread everything? Is she... You could stay with me, she blurts. If you wanted. Pause. I mean, since your parents are kind of the worst and you don't have anywhere else. And why is it so hot in here? Louise moves to throw the blankets off and starts to sit up, but Logan yanks her back in, wrestling her to the mattress, pinning her there. Icy blue eyes meet her warm brown ones. She looks like she wants to run away or crawl into a hole, but before she can panic further, he kisses her. Soft and deep. He sweeps his tongue into her mouth and God, he can't get enough of her. But before he can start nipping at her lips and tugging at her hair, he pulls back. Are you serious? He asks, and he hates how desperately hopeful he sounds. But Louise looks relieved, face relaxing, and no longer trying to scramble away. Well, she starts, we were staying together almost every night anyway. And then you wouldn't have to go anywhere in the morning to get ready. Your stuff would be here. And you could make me food. He rolls his eyes at that last comment. What am I? Your live-in butler? She purses her lips in thought. I think I prefer gigolo chef. He glares and pinches her side. Watch it there, Four Ears. Or what? Louise fires back, eyes already alight with challenge. Maybe I'll teach you a lesson, he says softly. She outright laughs at that and wastes no time flipping him over and sitting on top of him, still naked and unabashed. Let's be real, Bush. I'll be the one doing the teaching. Night. He swallows hard as her hand trails down his chest. Her eyes flash wickedly when he nods. Yep. Whatever you say, Belcher. Good boy. She pulls him in by the back of his neck, kissing him until the breath is gone from his lungs, and they both pull away gasping. I could get used to this, Logan says, tracing his thumb along the ridge of her cheekbone. Looks like you'll have to, Louise replies. Logan sits up to bury his face in the hollow of her throat, so blissfully, stupidly happy. He kisses her there before he takes her by surprise, flipping her onto her back again. His hands run up her legs to push her knees apart. He knows just how he's going to spend his afternoon. Chapter 11. Epilogue. Summary. 1 year in the future, we see Louise and Logan preparing for her debut solo art exhibition at the Fish Odors Gallery. Louise, will there be snacks at intermission? Louise groans, turning to smack her sibling in annoyance. Jean, for the last time, an art exhibit doesn't have an intermission. You come, you look at art. Maybe the curator or the artist says something, and then you leave. Jean blinks. So, no food? Jean, we're literally having dinner right now, Bob points out, gesturing to all of them crowded around the small kitchen table. They manage to squeeze an extra chair in, just barely, but everyone squishes together, shoulder to shoulder. Sss. Thanks again for cooking, Mr. B. Lou never shuts up about your ribs, Logan adds, face already covered in sauce. Louise scrunches her nose, a grumble of dissent rumbling through her. Logan, she hisses. Shut up. Dad can't know my true feelings about his cooking. He'll get all weird and smug. Bob blushes, a smile spreading across his face. What? You like my ribs, Louise? Louise just glares at Logan as if to say, you see? But Logan just beams, unapologetic. It's been a year since Louise chased after Logan. A year since he declined law school. A year since he'd told her he loved her. And a year since she said it back. She had wanted to combust on the spot, but she's never regretted it. Not for a moment. Louise rolls her eyes at Logan and gives him a shove that almost sends him sprawling across her family's kitchen floor. He sticks out his tongue at her and flicks a pea her way. Louise can't help but laugh, vowing vengeance. Logan just smirks, but then Jean sucks him into a debate on the musical merits of Prince. Which is more iconic, Raspberry Beret or Kiss? Her eyes linger as the two argue, just at the corner of Logan's mouth, at the dimple tucked along his jaw. Even after a year, in moments like this, when he's so relaxed with her family, or when he makes her favorite dessert, or he rests his hand on the back of her neck, it makes her heart swell and flutter, like an engorged hummingbird flitting about in her chest. He still drives her batshit crazy. They still argue and antagonize each other. Now it just happens to be about the latest samurai movie they watched together, or whose coffee order is superior. Louise, honey, should we get going? Doesn't it start in half an hour? Linda asks between tearing off bites of a rib. Louise glances at the clock on the stove, the fluorescent numbers glowing. Shit. Yeah, but you guys don't need to come right away. It's going to be several hours, and it's going to be a lot of standing around, and... Tina holds her hand up. We're coming, Louise. The whole night. She pauses, taking in Louise's stunned expression. What? We're supporting you, damn it! Tina bangs her fist on the table, and a clump of potato salad goes flying. Jean tries to catch it in their mouth, and falls to the floor in the process. But still they chime in from the linoleum. Hear, hear! All right, weirdos. God, don't make it such a big deal, Louise says. But Logan catches her eye, and the way his mouth tilts up and his eyes crinkle, she feels caught. She purses her mouth. Don't even... And Logan has the audacity to smile more. It's cute when you pretend you don't love their enthusiasm. Louise glares, brow furrowed. Shut up. Logan just gives her a pointed look and glances at her family, who's all begun to stand and bustle around preparing to leave. They're excited for you, short stack. Let 'em love you the way they know how. She looks around at them. Her mom, who's chugging the last of her wine. Jean, who has pulled out a compact and is applying some last-minute eyeliner and lip gloss. Tina, straightening her glasses and attempting to adjust her bra discreetly. And her dad, looking uncomfortable in his dress shoes and the only blazer he owns. Her family. Come on, 4 ears. Time to go. She looks up, and there's Logan. At her elbow, hand held out in offering. Louise rolls her eyes at the mock chivalry, but takes his hand anyway, and there's still that thrill of fire lacing up her arm and through her veins. A delicious zing that heats her up from the inside out. God, she feels like a cooked, gooey marshmallow, going all warm and soft like this. Aw, Linda coos, spotting the tender glance between Louise and Logan. Louise scrunches her nose, but doesn't retract her hand from Logan's. Mom, stop being so sentimental. Pull yourself together, woman. Linda splutters. But it's just so sweet. Gross, Logan chimes in. Disgusting, Louise agreed. But Logan leans close to Linda, stage whispering, I think we're pretty sweet too, Mrs. B. But you know, he darts a not at all subtle look at Louise. Somebody who wants to feel like we're too badass for cutesy. Logan, Louise shouts, smacking him across the chest with her free hand and pulling him toward the stairs. We'll see you there, she calls over her shoulder. Her mother shouts after them, You're a dear, Logan. Don't let Miss Missy boss you around too much. Thanks, Mom, Louise yells back, voice dripping with sarcasm. Since the first time she had work displayed at the gallery, she was a nervous wreck. Over the years of producing art, she had received her fair share of criticism, and she was only too aware she was going from the world of tattoo art to gallery exhibit art. Some people would turn their noses up at her work just because of her background. While she normally didn't give a flying fuck what others thought, her gallery opening had to go well. She might not get another chance like this if it didn't. So Louise had bit her nails to the quick and plucked at any loose threads. It had been a group show. She had displayed 2 pieces, but the fidgety, excited ball of stress she'd become the week leading up to that opening, Logan practically had to peel her off the ceiling. But now, here she is, Louise Belcher, solo show artist with her collection. Change is an inferno. Her hands don't shake. Her heart clatters in her chest. But she doesn't feel like she's about to run down the hall to vomit up her guts. She's not thriving exactly, but she's managing quite well. They've been here for an hour now, and she hasn't wanted to rip someone's head off or run out of the room to punch something. And that is a win. Louise, a pained, creaky voice grumbles. Louise turns to find a very old, very frail lady, stooped with age and pronounced wrinkles that swallow whatever expression she is trying for. But Louise's eyes widen in recognition. Edith? The old lady just glowers further. Or Louise thinks it's a glower. It's hard to tell amidst the layers of wrinkles. Yes, you idiot. What? Surprised I'm still alive? Louise balks, unsure what to say to that. I mean, oh, shut up. Who asked you? Louise's brows creep up. Well, I'm trying to tell you something, girl. Edith harshly interjects, effectively cutting her off. Louise snaps her jaw shut. Your work is... Louise's eyes go wide. Drivel? Pedestrian? Antiquated? Some of them are rude criticism she's received before. Some of them are her own mean thoughts she's been trying her best to stuff down. In that moment, they run wild. But Edith reaches out her arm, squeezing Louise's hand. Exceptional. All the mean, hateful words she was sure Edith was going to say flicker out of her mind, fluttering away like bats in a cave. Her mouth goes dry, and it's only then that she realizes it's hanging open. Wow. Thanks, Edith. Edith just grumbles, but motions to the work beside them. Especially this one, the line work, the gesture. You've captured him well. And the flames. Her mouth twists, and Louise realizes with utter shock that this may well be what Edith considers a smile. They bleed and breathe. They have a life to them, wild and beating. Edith releases her hand and nods. Well done. Edith shuffles away as Louise finally finds her voice, trying her best at bravado. Captured who well? But Edith doesn't turn back, already brandishing her cane and trying to fight one of the other gallery patrons. "You've already sold 4 pieces." Louise turns, lips curving up. Logan wraps his hands around her waist, pulling her closer by the belt loops, and she's too drunk on success and pride to reprimand him. "He's, really?" she asks him, but her chin juts, ever the proud little urchin. "I mean, obviously. I am talented." "You are," he agrees, voice rumbling in her ear as he lowers his mouth to skate along her jaw. She scrunches her nose at him and pulls his hand to her mouth before she bites into the soft flesh there. Before he can react, though, Louise pulls free of his grip and his eyes narrow. "We're playing it like that, huh?" He quirks a brow. "I notice this one's not for sale," Logan says, pointing to the piece they're standing in front of, the one Edith had complimented. Louise smiles as she turns to face it. It's an inked outline of a man in silhouette, back to the viewer, face hidden as he stands in front of a great bonfire. The watercolor flames curling and bleeding reds and oranges and golds. It almost looks as if it's flickering. His hands are raised overhead, almost like a bird, ready to take flight. You can just make out the hint of the tattooed sleeve of his arm. The title, "From the Ashes He Comes." Louise turns to him, stoic and face carefully blank. There are prints available. His mouth quirks at the corner. "But not the original?" She furrows her brow in mock consideration, tapping her chin, hemming and hawing just a bit. No, I don't think so. Because," now Louise glares, "because that piece belongs in the artist's private collection." Logan's face splits wide into the biggest grin. "You'd miss a portrait of me? What, you don't get enough of me in real life?" She sticks her tongue out at him. "Who says it's you, Bush? I'm sick of you, but this one's pretty to look at and it won't pester me." Logan's mouth drops open. "You think I'm pretty?" Louise growls, swatting him on the chest, but his hand darts out, snatching her wrist and pulling her close. She's about to rain hell down upon him when he drops his mouth down, hovering just above her ear. "This is amazing. You are amazing. It's a gorgeous show, short stack. And I'm proud of you." And just like that, her heart squeezes into her throat, and she's momentarily forgotten what words are and how to find them when you need them. Instead, a little puff of air escapes her lips. She just stares at him, dumbfounded. But a clinking of glass interrupts the haze of her stupor, and she scans the room, looking for a broken glass flute or something. But instead, Felix Fischoder holds his glass aloft, tapping it perhaps a bit too aggressively with a fork. He clears his throat, holding a microphone. Pardon me, if I could just..." Calvin Fischoder materializes at his side and snatches the microphone from Felix. "Pipe down, patrons. My little brother wishes to address all of you. He's never been one for commanding a space, so you'll just..." "Shut up, Calvin," Felix hisses, trying to grab the mic back. But Mr. Fischoder holds tight and firm. Felix, just..." And then they break into a full skirmish with grabbing hands and flailing elbows. Finally, Calvin seems to remember they are in a crowded gallery surrounded by guests, effectively holding the mic out of Felix's grasp. "Oh, yes, excellent turnout this evening. But let's hear from the premier artist featured tonight. Our very own, Louise Belcher." Louise sighs, a bit blindsided by the abrupt pull of attention to her. She's not sure why she's surprised. Truthfully, she should have expected this from Tweedledee and Tweedledum. She lets out a long breath and steps forward, beanie-free and worried she'll trip in these strapped shoes and fancy wide-legged dress pants. Louise clears her throat. "Hi. Hello. Thanks so much to all of you for coming and supporting my art tonight." She looks over at the Fischoders, and Felix motions for her to go on. "Just a little while ago, the gallery's financial officer told me that we've sold 4 pieces so far tonight." There's a smattering of applause, and Louise sees her family, doing their best, but not at all successfully, containing themselves. She's fairly certain her mother just blew her nose, and Louise just hopes she hasn't begun sobbing in earnest. But her heart tugs at their pride for her, and a small smile creeps across her face. Sight, if you'd have told me 15 years ago that I would be here, a full exhibit in a gallery, with my work on display and people buying my doodles, I would have laughed in your face and told you to pull your head out of your ass. People shift uncomfortably, and there's a smattering of awkward laughter. But Louise doesn't care if people don't get her humor, because her eyes land on Logan, and he is grinning at her, wide and unabashed. "But here I am," Louise says. "And I couldn't have gotten here without my family," Jean shouts. "That's us!" before Tina hisses at them to keep their voice down. Louise grins wider and carries on. "Without the fish odors for taking a chance on my work, and without my partner, who has been a relentless pain in my ass with his enthusiastic encouragement," she gulps, squeezing the mic a bit tighter, "and who inspired this whole collection." Her eyes are fixed on Logan as she raises her glass. "Thanks for burning your life down to start something with me." A lump forms in her throat, and she can't make herself say any more words. Fortunately, Logan steps up, pulling the mic gently from her hands. "All right, folks. As Miss Belcher said, there are already several pieces that have sold this evening, so if you've been eyeing something, now is the time." And a final reminder that Miss Belcher will be auctioning off one of her originals this evening, so get your raffle tickets now. The proceeds of the raffle will be going to Miss Belcher's chosen charity, Forever Friends, our local animal shelter. Thanks for coming out. Logan passes the mic off to a deflated Felix, and then turns to Louise, grabbing her by the hand and pulling her out of the main area. She follows, still a bit dazed as he guides her further into the gallery. They weave their way through some of the narrow halls, until Logan tugs her into a different roped-off room. Her brow furrows as he moves the velvet cord to let them pass. "You know I'm all for a bit of law-breaking and light intrigue, but shouldn't we?" But her words are snuffed out when Logan pushes her back against the nearest wall and presses into her, a full-bodied electric kiss that leaves her buzzing and hungry as his thumb traces the line of her jaw as he parts her mouth easily with his tongue. His kiss is hot and heavy, demanding and devouring. "I don't think I've sufficiently thanked you yet," he grumbles, teeth grazing her neck as she hisses, reaching up to grab the nape of his neck and tug him even closer. "For what?" she breathes. But he's peppering kisses along her collarbone, and his hand slides across the silky fabric of her blouse, along her bodice to cup her breast. "Shit," she groans. They're both panting, and when Logan pulls away, she sees the twin patches of pink in his cheeks, and the way his blonde hair has gotten wrecked from her fingers. "Subsistenzib, for taking a chance on me, for letting me into your world, letting me love you." Her eyes widen, the breath sucked right out of her lungs. Logan blushes harder, throat bobbing in the wake of her silence. "Don't go all sappy on me now, Belcher." But she can see the little fragile piece of him that doubts himself, in that little pinch of his brows. "I'm gonna destroy you when we get home, Bush." It's the only thing that feels safe right now. On the pinnacle of so much feeling, it's still hard for her to say the words, even now. He smiles, thumb brushing across her cheek, but it doesn't quite crinkle his eyes like it usually does, and she can't help the gnawing pull in her stomach when he tugs her hand, insisting they should head back. Louise sells 7 more pieces by the end of the night. It's more than half of the collection, more than she's ever sold before, almost $2,500. And though she feels solid about the work and knows it's worth the prices she set, she wouldn't have sold so much without Logan. The rest of the night he is on his feet, schmoozing with countless patrons, investors, and local collectors. He pushes the raffle tickets so much the shelter is going to get close to $1,000. She watches him from across the room. How the corner of his mouth tilts just so when he's pitching, the way he talks with his hands, the little furrow in his brow when he's trying to figure out his next move. It hurts in a slow, sweet sort of way, like when she lets hot wax drip onto her skin, burning and soft. As the night wears on, people trickle out. Her family finally turns in as well. First, her parents, with Linda hauling Bob away when he looks like he might fall asleep standing up. Then Jean, as they explain they've got a set in an hour at one of the clubs downtown. And finally, Tina. "Oh, you did good, Louise. We're all really proud of you," she says. hugging her sister too tight and to some fierce protestations from Louise. But she doesn't pull away. She can't. Not when her heart feels thick and full. Not when it feels like she's walking on cotton ball clouds. As the final spectators filter out, she feels an arm snake around her waist. "Come on, Belcher. Time to get you home." Logan's hand slips into hers, and she leans into his side, letting the feel of his warmth seep into her as they walk out into the brisk night. On the drive home, Louise gets lost in the shimmer of the stars, the glow of the moon. It all feels too picturesque, too perfect, and she grabs Logan's hand and squeezes so that he looks her way. Midnight snack delivery? His lips curve up in that rogue smile of his. Yeah, right. Fries and milkshakes? God, he knows her so well. She always wants fries and milkshakes at the end of a long day. Her heart tugs as they pull up to the apartment and she nods. Logan moves to pull his phone out, but she pushes his hand down. "I can call. You head on in. Make sure Toyotomi gets his food." The damn cat was a menace until he ate his fill. By the time she makes it into the apartment, Logan has stripped out of his more formal attire. He's put on low-slung gray sweatpants and another one of his dumb shirts. But this time, it's a dumb shirt she got him about 4 months ago. It says, "This feminist has balls," in big, bold typeface, and it always makes her grin. "You look way too comfortable." "I'm changing too," she announces easily, strolling toward their bedroom to tug off the pants and blouse she'd had to suffer in all night, sweats and a well-worn crop top with a gaping hole along the neck. She sighs. So comfortable. Tommy is already curled up and settled in Logan's lap when she emerges from the bedroom. Logan scrolls through the vast amounts of streaming content, restless and searching. "What are you in the mood for?" But there's a knock at the door. Louise waves him off. "I got it." Logan continues to scroll as she comes back in with a greasy bag and 2 shakes, already munching on a fry. "What about Hawk and Chick?" she asks through a mouthful of food. His mouth twitches. For the 40th time? She punches him in the arm, but he smiles and selects one of the old movies. Louise knows he loves them too, though he'll never admit it. She grabs a plate and dumps the fries, adding a helping of ketchup, smiling at the addition on top of the pile. Louise gulps, steeling herself. This is it. The moment. Now don't fuck it up. Louise sets the shakes down and pops the plate on the coffee table in front of them. Logan reaches out, grabbing a handful without looking, and Tommy looks offended from the sudden movement, scrambling away to his cat bed. Logan's hand nudges something at the top of the pile that isn't a fry, and he looks down, brow furrowing curiously. Is that an onion ring? Louise's heart is in her throat, and she squeezes her hands to keep from shaking. Uh-huh. Yep. He looks at her quizzically before looking at the onion ring again. Did it get mixed in with fries or... No, Louise says, voice coming out in a squeak as she tries to clear her throat. I asked for it. Jesus, she sounds like an idiot. Now Logan turns to her, eyes narrowing and looking almost suspicious. You asked for 1 onion ring? God. Oh, God. He's not getting it. She's going to have to explain. Why does she feel like she's sweating and having a heart attack? Louise plucks the onion ring up, sliding from the couch to get on her knees. I know I'm shit at talking about my feelings, but I'm gonna try. She clears her throat. This past year, it's been great. More than great. I've been the happiest I've been in a long time. Logan just stares at her, a bit perplexed, definitely confused. So she plows on. Because of you, you idiot. You've made my life better. Immeasurably better with your dumb blonde hair and stupid, charming smile. I love the way you challenge me, even though it also annoys the shit out of me. The way you make me laugh. The way you fight with me and for me. The way you just make everything a little better. Even the shit stuff like paying bills. I love that you don't let me run away from my feelings. I even love those horrendous shirts and your stupid or bell without a cause attitude. Louise heaves out a breath. She hadn't realized she's been holding. I love you, okay? And she holds the onion ring out. I thought maybe you'd want to, I don't know, take the next step," she finishes, voice practically cracking. Logan looks from Louise's scrunched face to the onion ring she's extended in front of her, and his face shifts from delighted confusion to joyful shock. Are you proposing to me? With an onion ring?" Louise glares, already grumbling under her breath and moving to stand. But Logan rips the onion ring from her hand and tugs her to the couch so that she stumbles and falls on top of him in a lump. "Yes!" he shouts. "Yes! 1,000 times yes, Louise Belcher, love of my life, bearer of my soul, enchantress of my... Oh my God, I regret everything. Give me the onion ring." But he's already slipped it over 2 fingers since it's too big to fit on one. "I don't think so, short stack. No take-backs." Louise rolls her eyes. "What have I done?" Logan just grins and grips the back of her neck, hauling her to him until he presses his lips to hers, kissing her slow and deep, reveling in the feel of each other, the soft pants of breath, the gentle swipe of his thumb along her cheek. She sinks into him, electric and melting, until he pulls back and confesses, "You've made me the happiest man alive. 4 ears." Her heart feels ready to burst. It's too much. She feels like she's glowing, pulsing with that thrumming feeling behind her ribs. She tugs on Logan's shirt, pulling him up off the couch with her. "Shut up and show me a good time, Bush." He grins, hands already at the hem of her shirt, palms gliding along the exposed skin of her lower back, trailing after her toward the bedroom. The fries and the shakes stay behind, all but forgotten,